Okay. Hello. No face cam today because I feel ugly. How are you? Hey, yeah. I've been busy. Jeez. I've been busy today. Been doing all of these, like the bases for all these guys. So we're gonna be working on that. But also, while I'm doing it today, what I'm gonna be doing is what's the word? Oh, I'm gonna be watching lore videos. So you can watch along with me too. Okay. You just finished working on. Oh, jeez. You just finished on. Oh, you've been working on it the whole time, have you? If you're sending me DMs, just let me know in chat because I do not have them. I have to put on streamer mode or else it'll be going off, you know? So I don't get notifications when I'm on stream, kind of thing, you know? Okay, so. Let me just. Okay. Full screen. Should be good. So we're gonna be doing this is a deep dive. This video is a deep dive into the sisters with guns. So we're gonna be it's gonna be open. Oh, sorry, it's gonna be open the top corner, or it's gonna be in the corner as we work on it. Actually, I might put it down below. Where's it better, here or here? Let me just.
This video is brought to you by Warhammer 40k Tacticus. In the grim darkness of the far future, humanity is beset on all sides by some of the most truly horrific and monstrous entities imaginable. Dark eldritch gods that view the living as nothing more than playthings. All manner of heretics, witches, mutants, and alien
watch this as we go.
That lurk deep in the void of space and hunger for the flesh of mortal men. To be.
Is that too loud? You think? It's fine. Okay, let's get going. Hold on. I'm not sure if I'm making this too thick or too thin. I mean, we're gonna figure it out. I know you need a bit of water as well, so.
Born into such a galaxy is a truly horrific fate indeed. But aside from the various heroic forces that seek to protect the kingdom of man, there is a force far more powerful that inspires hope in the believer and fear in the hearts of the corrupt.
How much should I be putting in this?
Of faith.
I'll be doing okay so far.
Of an entire species that propels them to ever-increasing acts of greatness, even in such a miserable existence. Now, although the faithful are many, with an estimated human population in the quintillions, none are more adept at using the powers of faith as a weapon than that of the Adeptus Sororitas. The Sisters of Battle, as they are often called, are a truly ancient and righteous organization of battle-hardened women, each possessing considerable martial skill and raised from birth in some of the most stringent and brutal military academies in the galaxy. Each and every warrior possessing a deadly combination of intellect, military prowess, and unbreakable resolve for Holy Crusade. The sisters march to war armored by steel and faith and deliver salvation to those that follow in the Emperor's light and his divine judgment to the wicked. They are armed with the Holy Trinity, Bolter, Flamer, and Melta, with which they deliver the Emperor's divine obliteration to the heretic, the witch, and the mutant, while they fight, sing hymns, and shout out the names of their blessed and founders. Names of the unclean, drowned out by the roar of chainswords and the prayers bellowed in his name. Sisters in winged jump packs fly overhead, descending upon their enemies like a retinue of vengeful angels, while multi-missiles from artillery tanks rain down upon the fortification of the heretics as if from heaven itself. Each and every weapon, piece of armor, and war machine is anointed with holy scripture, sanctified by the priests of their order. Their faith in the Emperor is so absolute that the sisters display a level of fearlessness unheard of for mortals. And perhaps even more remarkably, their faith often manifests itself through literal miracles. The force of a blow being
Actual
amplified
miracles,
beyond
that's
what is possible. The stock of their gun breaking through armored helmets and crushing skulls. Charging heretics suddenly bursting into
Look at
flames.
that. How cool is
Attacks
that?
from their enemies that, by all accounts, should have been mortal injuries, leaving little more than faint bruises. Or even
that's taken up,
literal
isn't it?
angels materializing out of nowhere the moment all hope seems lost. They march across the galaxy, showing no mercy to the demonic abominations that have wormed their way into the hearts of the weak. For all that stray from his light must face his divine judgment. To stand against the Sisters of Battle is to fight belief itself, a force that is unkillable, unwavering, unquestioning, and unrelenting. Their holy wars will never end until every last ounce of corruption has been ripped from the beating heart of the Imperium, and the stars themselves are stained red with the blood of heretics. Through the fires of war and their righteous zeal, will the Sisters cleanse the galaxy of the heretic, the witch, and the alien, purged in
They're so
his
sexy for no
name.
reason.
So with all that out of the way, what exactly are the Sisters of Battle, and what are they all about? Well, the Sisters of Battle are a militant branch of a larger organization known as the Adeptus Sororitas, which itself is an all-female sisterhood of an even larger organization known as the Adeptus Ministorum, or more commonly as the Ecclesiarchy. Now, you can think of the Ecclesiarchy like the official state church of the Imperium. That maintains that the Emperor of Mankind was a living God who walked amongst his servants before ascending to the realm of the spiritual with his entombment upon the Golden Throne. He now watches over and protects mankind from the heavens. Their religion is officially known as the Imperial Cult, and the tenets they lay out as the Imperial Creed. It is the faith shared by about every loyal human alive, with the exception of a handful of factions such as the Adeptus Mechanicus or the majority of the Space Marines, to name but a few. The Church itself controls an enormous amount of power and holds great influence over the Imperium.
This yoke is so
side
handy.
by side with the Adeptus Administratum as one of the primary powers governing day-to-day life within the Imperium.
Look at that
To the
shit.
average citizen living amongst the million worlds of the Imperium, the Emperor has always been the god of humanity. It has always been this way. But we as the audience get to see him through the Horus Heresy novels and get a better understanding of his views on religious worship, something that he was definitely not in favor of at the time, and saw religion as a hindrance to mankind's ability to prosper. But from humanity's perspective, those events happened over 10,000 years ago, and the vast majority of the documentation of what he was actually like has either been lost or purged. They mostly just have to go on what the Ecclesiarchy has told them. Most of the knowledge of his divinity comes from a book known as the Lectitio Divinitatis, a tome that was penned by one of the Emperor's Primarch sons, Lorgar of the Wordbearers, who would go on to be the first betrayer of the Imperium and initiate
So the Emperor's like Jesus Christ himself, kind of thing.
the Horus Heresy, one of the bloodiest civil wars mankind had ever seen. And nowadays, he's literally a demon out in the warp doing all kinds of unspeakable evil things. To use a real-world example, it would be like the Bible being written by the devil. The fact that he wrote this book is known only to a few, such as Guilliman, Primarch of the Ultramarines, and the de facto leader of the Imperium in the 41st millennium. But if he were to reveal such knowledge, it would immediately be condemned as blasphemy by the church.
Let me just do one thing. Try and get this chat over here. Yeah. What? Because then... What? I better see it better. No. Also, if I make any mistakes, any rookie mistakes, let me know. Because I'd rather know now and later. I want to know more about these sisters. If I'm going to be
keeps his mouth shut. The Emperor is everywhere and everything at all times. It is believed that he offers his divine protection that those that believe in him. And the people of this time take great comfort in this, because the 40k universe, for lack of better words, is pretty brutal and horrifying.
I'm gonna be scared when I have to actually do
those
details.
Who live in squalor in the underhives, or in poverty on some backwater agri world that the Imperium has all but forgotten about. Knowing that the Emperor is watching over them gives many the strength they need to keep going. When it comes to the way the Sisters of Battle view their faith, there are a few very specific beliefs that, although are not wholly unique to the Sisters, make them stand apart from the masses. That is the belief in righteous suffering and martyrdom. For the Sisters, suffering is to be embraced. For to suffer is to be made stronger and eventually be made immune to.
Why is that so
They
sexy?
believe there is no greater death than to die in the Emperor's name. Each sister believes that through death will her martyrdom light a fire in the hearts of thousands, if not millions. And over time, the tales of her heroic deeds will spread across the galaxy, inspiring courage and heroism in a whole new generation. It is a glorious death, and not to be feared, but embraced as going home to the Emperor. Before we go any further, a quick shout out to this video's sponsor, who was nice enough to provide
I love their
some
nickname,
prizes to
Nuns
give
with
away to my
Guns.
viewers. When I heard that Warhammer 40k Tacticus was going to be a mobile game, I'm going to be honest, I was a little bit skeptical. 40k games are hit or miss as it is, and that goes dark. In the novel Mark of Faith by Rachel Harris, a group of sisters is fighting against the demonic forces of chaos. They have suffered enormous losses and are basically making their last stand. Now, one of these women who will
Also, Femboy, am I doing it right? As in, like, just do all blue, and then I can go with the other ones. Because this is the base, isn't it? What is that? Is that? They do it? Should be fine, I think. Because blue is the main color of these
become
guys.
the main character of this story, Evangeline, is remarked by her fellow sisters as having one of the most beautiful voices in the entirety of the sororitas. This is a truly dark day, and the sisters know that it may be the end for them. So her fellow sister Isadora asks her, "Will you sing for us once more? Will you sing for us at the end?" She knows that her sisters take great comfort in her singing, and so she promises that she will. And this is when the sister superior of the group gives this speech. "We have suffered greatly here, my sisters, as we suffered at Ocassus and at Armageddon and on 100 other battlefields. But suffering is not to be lamented. Suffering is to be celebrated. Where there is suffering, there is life. There is spirit and fire and all of the things for which he made us. Where there is suffering, that is where we must fight with every ounce of our strength he gave us until it is time to join him in eternal glory. Fight, suffer, stand until you cannot. In his name." After this, the demons of Tzeentch begin to materialize all around them, and the sisters charge into battle, bolter shells blasting apart demons and chainswords roaring to life. Just as the sisters seem like they may end up having the upper hand, a greater demon, a Lord of Change, materializes before them, and through its twisting flamethrower made of pure warp magic, it begins to immolate the sisters one by one. The demons surge with newfound power at the appearance of their dark leader, and the sisters end up getting overwhelmed. Evangeline is fighting her hardest, her bolter pounding in her hands, but when she looks to her left, she sees her beloved sister Isadora engulfed in flames. And in a seemingly mocking cruelty, the Lord of Change casts a terrible spell that slows down time, forcing the soldiers to endure the agonizing pain. Evangeline wants to scream a roar of rage at the sight, but it's locked in her throat by the spell. Slowly, the burning face of her sister turns to her. Isadora manages one final request. "Sing," she says. The spell dissipates, and the woman falls to her knee, burning alive. Evangeline is the youngest of the group, and in comparison is inexperienced. She doesn't know what to do. She is completely overwhelmed. So she does the only thing she can, and she sings, just like she promised she would. "O God Emperor, who is strength, I devote this life to you." While she sings, her bolter barks its fury. She turns its wrath upon the greater demon, bursting feathers and blood into the air. The beast roars and wheels about, sending bouts of fire into her other sisters. "O God Emperor, who is grace, I devote this life to you." She buckles and falters, blood welling up in her throat, but never stops singing. She steadies herself and continues her march on this abhorrent abomination, the thing that has taken everything from her, her home and her sisters, but it hasn't taken her faith. As she sings, her sister Ashava manages to slip through the greater demon's guard, leaping into the air to meet it, her chainsword tearing into its flank. The beast screams in pain and grabs her out of the air with a clawed hand and smashes her into the ground. Evangeline's heart breaks as her sister's bones do. "O God Emperor who is valor, I devote this life to you." She keeps singing, tears rolling down her face as the demon turns its bellowing fire onto their standard bearer. A relic that before, the demons couldn't touch or even come near. The standard bearer warps and twists into a chaos spawn and throws itself at Evangeline, knocking her to the ground. Just before the creature can finish her off, its multifaceted head bursts apart. Standing behind it is her sister superior Adeline, holding a smoking bolter. "Sing, Evangeline," she says, as a tear trails through the blood and dirt on the old woman's face. Before Evangeline can get up, the greater demon lunges and swings its massive sword at them. There is a blinding light, and when it dissipates, the women are still alive. Her sister superior deflects
This bitch is singing to victory.
sword, a seeming impossibility, a miracle. "And until you cannot," the old woman says to her. She gets up and stands by her sister superior, ready to face the demon once more. Its sword falls again. This time, a miracle does not manifest, and her sister superior is cut down, the blow cleaving straight through the power sword to eviscerate her. Evangeline screams in rage and deep sadness and picks up the broken sword and stands against the chaotic monstrosity. She is the last sister standing, and the demons are swarming in on her. She is ready to join her fallen sisters. Despite her suffering, she finishes her song, "O God Emperor, I devote this death to you." She raises her hands in the shape of the Aquila, and the darkness takes her. And you'll just have to read the book for yourself if you want to know more. It's excellent, and this story comes from the first few pages, so I don't want to spoil the rest of it. The sacred orders of the Adeptus Sororitas are thousands of years old, and began during one of the darkest periods in mankind's history, known as the Age of Apostasy. Thousands of years later, in the current time period of the 41st millennium, the Sisterhood acts as one of mankind's greatest military forces, standing alongside that of the Space Marines, the Astra Militarum, the Imperial Navy, the Custodians, and the Adeptus Mechanicus. The presence of the Sisters on the battlefield inspires the forces of the Astra Militarum in particular, due to their shared faith, to ever greater acts of bravery and heroism, such as the commanding charismatic presence that they hold. The Ecclesiarchy and the Sororitas are withholden to the larger Imperium, but they can enact their own campaigns, known as Wars of Faith, if it is deemed that the Imperial Creed has been threatened. Such engagements can last for hundreds, if not thousands of years, and are not complete until all traces of heresy have been completely eradicated. Such wars see the Sisters ferried into battle in their thousands, their warriors sent to destroy and slaughter any who have strayed so far from the path of the righteous that even the Emperor's light cannot redeem them. They act in his name as judge, jury, and executioner of the condemned. Now, the Adeptus Sororitas is a massive organization, and normally what we see in the lore is just their militant branches, which are often commonly referred to as the Sisters of Battle. The Sororitas actually features a lot of different orders that are not combat related, such as the Order Hospitaller, which focuses mainly on medical research and the training of battlefield medics. So if the Adeptus Sororitas is such a massive organization, then how is it organized? Well, it is split between two major covenants. One on Terra, known as Covenant Prioris, and another on the sacred world of Ophelia 7, known as Covenant Sanctorum. The two covenants are then further broken down into many different smaller orders as well, such as the militant orders of the Bloody Rose, Martyred Lady, and Valorous Heart being based in Ophelia, while the Sacred Rose, Ebon Chalice, and Argent Shroud operate out of Terra, each one being founded by or at least dedicated to a specific saint. All of these different organizations have completely unique histories, cultures, and interpretation of religious doctrines. And whatever differences they may have, they can all agree that they serve the Emperor above all others and are instruments of his will. And when it comes to the Sisters' power hierarchy, it's pretty straightforward. At the absolute top, you have the rank of Abbess Sanctorum, a rank currently held by Morven Val. They are the leader of the entire Adeptus Sororitas, and the position is that of the highest duties and responsibilities, one to be born with stoicism, rigid devotion, and humble acceptance. Beneath her are what is known as Prioresses, who are the figureheads of each of the two covenants. And further down the line, every single order is represented by a Canoness Superior. Missions are often led by a Canoness, and well beneath her are her Palatines, or junior officers. And with all that out of the way, let's talk a bit more about how the Sisters wage war, by taking a closer look at a handful of their most iconic units. So the Battle Sisters serve as the frontline soldiers and bulk of the Adeptus Sororitas' fighting force. These women are clad in power armor and trained extensively in the use of what is referred to as the Holy Trinity of Bolter, Melta, and Flamer. And I know I've said this about other things in the past, but that has got to be the most metal thing I have ever read. The bolter represents the hand of the Emperor, reaching out to condemn the heretic. The flamer and its bouts of holy fire, representing the Emperor's purifying word. Well, the meltagun, which fires beams of superheated energy that can penetrate even the strongest metals in the galaxy, is seen as his penetrating gaze. And when the Holy Trinity is combined and utilized on the battlefield, it creates an all-purpose zone of death that obliterates hordes of infantry and armored vehicles alike, none escaping from the Sisters' judgment. Now, these women are not gene-augmented like their Space Marine cousins. Instead, are just human women, recruited from the Schola Progenium, which honestly deserves its own video, but to simplify it, you can think of it as the most elite military academy in the Imperium. Every sister is not only an incredibly skilled and disciplined warrior, but also has an incredible intellect, as the Progenium is absolutely ruthless and designed to weed out the weak. These women are often led by what is known as a Sister Superior, a veteran sister holding a rank similar to that of a sergeant in other factions, or more rarely by a Canoness, a shining beacon of righteousness and purpose, who can lead anything from a small mission of sisters, all the way up to an entire order in the case of a Canoness Superior. Dominion squads are sisters of battle that are normally armed with a variety of different flamer or melta weapons in order to clear out command bunkers and any strategic site of value to the sisterhood. They are women who are sent in to smash apart enemy defenses and break battle lines, and are noted for being incredibly courageous and aggressive. And
thank you.
Jesus.
Are characterized by a hot
Scared the shit out of me. Thanks for following. Fucking hell.
Are calm and
That scared the shit.
said to have an almost serene-like demeanor about them. They've been intensely trained in the use of heavy weapons and are said to be some of the best shots within the entirety of the sisterhood, displaying levels of almost inhuman accuracy.
Oh, you scared the shit out of me.
Associated with the heavy bolter, it's not uncommon for retributors to wield meltas or flamers as
didn't it?
as they are all an essential part of the Trinity. The retributors' main job is to provide supporting fire to their sisters as they advance in front of them.
Why is that? That's weird. Usually, Usually it does it instantly. Whatever.
Sending hammering volleys of bolter shells to punish those that would seek to do their sisters harm.
Doesn't matter.
The
I'll fix for next time.
Are some of the most elite
Watching the
combat veterans within the ranks of the sisterhood.
I'm watching these guys because I'm new to Warhammer, and 12 times, Jesus, that's weird. Well, thanks for following, Panda Russell. Oh, so new to it. Nice. I went to the Warhammer shop, and I was really nervous about it. And then I asked him, "Where do I start?" And the guy was just like, "Oh, come here," and he just brought me over, and he let me make one. And it's like that I was addicted to it. Yeah, you did that yesterday? Oh, nice one. And I got the starter set, so this is what I'm doing now, the starter set. But what I really want to do is get the Sisters of Battle. Oof.
Sisters of Battle. Women who have seen countless horrific wars. And often, though not exclusively, will be made into units of bodyguards.
I'm just as... I don't know what I'm doing.
Of escorting their
just like you.
Into battle. Without a moment's hesitation, each one of these women would lay down their life for their beloved matriarch.
Also the Blood Angels as well, because they're
served as
red armor.
retributors or dominions in the past, giving them access to a wide array of heavy firepower. And most of them managed to achieve the rank of a Sister Superior.
Thank you.
And because of this, each woman brings her own distinct set of skills and experience to the group. The bond she shares with her sisters is deeper than any other, and together, this group of veterans is able to combine their shared wisdom to overcome any obstacle or foe.
Oh yeah, I have heard.
Horrifying. But more so than just their extensive experience,
they get like stripped naked.
As being some of the most devout
give it a big sword, and then someone like whips them into battle.
And enlightenment that inspires their younger sisters, who hope to one day emulate at least a fraction of their.
They're sexy, right?
Now we're going to move on to something a little bit darker, and that is, of course, the iconic Repentia. Units of Repentia are comprised of sisters who have at some point failed to live up to the incredibly stringent code of their order, whether it be a great personal failure, a lapse in faith, or
they're actually so sexy, like a section
that her sister superiors believe demands penance. Such a sister will be
nuns with guns,
her armor and her guns, and will instead be given a massive two-handed chainsword, known simply as an eviscerator. She will then be forced to take to the battlefield in nothing more than simple clothes and humble rags. The sisters that would be known as Repentia seek penance for their failures through glorious and holy butchery, or at the very least, absolution through their death, as there is no greater honor than to die
You got the
fighting
1,000
in the
Sons.
Emperor's name. And the way their fellow sisters view them is actually pretty
I'm still
interesting.
learning all the
Because on one hand, they are
factions and
outcasts
stuff.
and represent abject failure. But on the other, the fellow battle sisters have an enormous amount of respect for them. They are viewed as pilgrims ready to make the ultimate sacrifice for their faith, absolutely fearless in the face of
But
overwhelming
I made an
odds.
agreement with my
Becoming
wife.
a
I can't
Repentia
get another
is
set until I
possible
finish
for
this
any
one.
member of the sisterhood, no matter what their rank is, from new recruits all the way up to a canoness. Even Saint Celestine was said to have served as a Repentia at one point. And even the sisters of the non-militant orders can end up as Repentia. And it doesn't have to be ordained by her superiors. There are many documented cases of sisters volunteering
nice one.
to take on the role of Repentia
Heresy.
in a personal quest to atone for a perceived mistake. It doesn't matter if her sisters blame her or not.
Brother.
In her eyes, she has failed those closest to her and must do this to make amends. They take to the battlefield charging directly into the enemy's front lines, their eviscerators roaring, hungry for the blood of heretics. They strike and slash at their enemies, every blow sending limbs spiraling through the air and unleashing torrents of blood and gore. Enemy after enemy is cut down,
flesh, Jesus.
and with every corpse she creates, she feels the forgiveness of the God Emperor coming closer and closer. The worst sin that a Repentia can make is fleeing from battle. It is the ultimate act of cowardice and betrayal. It is to spit directly in the face of the God Emperor and to reject his offer of forgiveness. Such a crime is met with a truly horrific punishment. The deserter is placed into a cruel machine known as a mortifier engine. Now, much like the
Mortifier
penitent engine,
engine.
which we'll cover momentarily, it is a bipedal war machine wielding devastating melee weapons. The sister is blindfolded and sealed inside the armored, soundproof sarcophagus. She is then bound to the point where she can't even move. She will then be hooked up to the coffin's neural agonizer array, a pretty barbaric device. It's specifically designed to enhance the pilot's self-loathing exponentially. While the engine fights,
Jesus.
driven on by her mental anguish, she will be fully aware that the machine is in battle, on a righteous crusade to slaughter the enemies of the Emperor, a battle that she will not be permitted to take part in. And to be denied the slaughtering of his enemies is downright torturous. She knows there is no hope and that her death is soon to follow. An unremembered end of no significance. The truly worst fate that could befall a sister. The penitent
I love how
engine, on
like
the
brutal
other
the
hand,
universe
fulfills a
is.
similar role, but ditches the armored sarcophagus. It is piloted by sinners, criminals, and heretics, but very specifically, a sinner who has repented their blasphemy against the Emperor is someone who truly wishes to be redeemed. The major difference here is that being placed in a mortifier is a fate that befalls the Repentia specifically, a position that was already a second chance at atonement. There is no third chances within the Adepta Sororitas. The pilots are normally members of the Ecclesiarchy.
As soon as I get any chances, really.
The Sororitas itself or the larger Ministorum, individuals who have strayed from the path of the Emperor's light, and through their mistakes or lapse in faith, have brought about the deaths of members of the faithful. And rather than simply being condemned and executed, they are given the opportunity to have their death mean something, and more importantly, to gain the God Emperor's forgiveness. In order to seek such an atonement, the individual is strapped to the front.
We have a
of the
Discord as well. I'd like to
and
see
fitted
your.
with a whole array of cybernetic implants that link them with the
Have you started
machine,
your models yet?
while
Or?
simultaneously having an enormous amount of life-preserving chemicals pumped into their body. The sinner is often clothed only in simple rags, the Emperor's divine protection being the only armor that they will receive. The engine and its pilot are driven by a frenzied need to be forgiven, hurling themselves into combat and rampantly slaughtering the enemy until they are inevitably put down. The drugs that are constantly being
this is only the base of these guys, like, you know.
at preserving life.
Haven't actually,
They, however,
like,
are not given any form of painkiller, as salvation is achieved
no
through
details
great
yet. Just
suffering.
and then I have all
Suffer
the
grievous
Tyranids as well that
over,
came with the
yet
set
they
as
will
well.
not be granted the
So
mercy of death. The Sisters of Battle see it as their sacred duty to bear witness to the holy carnage brought about by.
it's relaxing.
It is a grotesque, brutal, and sickening display. And even though the pilots have committed crimes, their willingness to do this, to throw themselves into the fray, is a remarkable act of devotion that should be respected.
Yeah,
And finally,
yeah, go
I
ahead,
want to
yeah.
talk about one of the strangest entities that the Sisters utilize in war. They're known as
Yep.
the living saints, Saint Celestine potentially being the most famous of which. These are divine, angel-like entities that seem to appear almost at random whenever they are needed the most, and most of their reported sightings end with their apparent death, only for them to reappear once more, sometimes decades or even centuries later. The living saints were mortals at one point, that through their remarkable devotion to the Emperor, have ascended to something similar to that of a demon prince. They have been imbued with a portion of the Emperor's strength and abilities,
That's insane.
which grants them remarkable powers, swinging flaming swords and manifesting gouts of holy flame from their person.
Literally like God.
They take to the battlefield aloft on glorious feathered wings, like an avenging angel, sent to deliver salvation to the faithful and damnation to the wicked. And I don't think it's possible to truly put into words what such an entity does for the morale of the Emperor's faithful. They appear when all hope seems
Literal
lost,
gods.
when the Imperium has suffered uncountable losses, and the enemy is sure to overwhelm them at any moment, when everything seems absolutely hopeless, and the mantra of the Emperor protects loses all meaning for the guardsmen in the trenches. In that moment, an actual angel appears, a literal physical manifestation of their faith, and a true, unquestionable miracle. To witness such divinity made manifest swells the hearts of the Sisters of Battle and the men and women of the Astra Militarum with hope, pride, and a refound vigor, a righteous second wind that propels them into combat, once more
Actual
into the
angels,
den
what
of
the
devils,
fuck?
shouting praise to the Emperor at the top of their lungs. So now that we know more about the Adeptus Sororitas, let's talk about where they came from. You see, the Sisters of Battle can trace their origins back to a dark period in the Imperium's history known as the Age of Apostasy. And to truly understand the Sisters, we really need to have a grasp on what this often misunderstood time period was all about. And to really understand this, we're gonna need to know the difference between two powerful organizations within the Imperium, the Administratum and the Ministorum, which is often referred to as the Ecclesiarchy. You can think of them in a less than perfect analogy as the federal government and the state church of the Imperium. The Administratum was the system of bureaucrats placed in charge of running the Imperium as efficiently as possible. The pencil pushers and politicians, the ones responsible for collecting tithes from all the worlds within the Imperium, distribution of resources, overseeing supply lines.
That's sick. That's really good. Yeah, no problem. No, they always look. It always looks. Unless you have a really good camera, it's hard to get the actual.
This system was a creation of the Emperor, and
all
when
the
he
little
was mortally
details and
wounded
stuff.
and placed upon the Golden Throne, the full-time managing of the Imperium fell to them. Whereas the Ministorum is a massive and powerful organization that promotes that the Emperor is the one true God and manages the spiritual well-being, or more accurately,
One of my friends.
strict
I don't know if he's still there.
compliance of every
He's
citizen
working
to
on
their
something right
imperial
now.
creed. And while
He's
he
in the
was
chat
alive,
earlier.
the Emperor had forbid the worship of any form of deity, and
He has
in particular
the
of himself.
big set
Now,
of
despite
these.
this edict, many cults would arise that worshipped him in secret
Sisters
across
of
the
Battle.
Imperium. For the most part, they remained in the shadows, meeting in the boiler rooms of ships and holding
Comes with a
candlelight
tank and
sigils.
stuff. It's
With
really
his
cool.
death, the worship of him as a god spread like wildfire. By the 32nd millennia, it is estimated that nearly 3/4 of all of humanity had taken to worshipping him. The dominant cult that viewed him as a savior figure, known as the Temple of the Savior Emperor, would come to full power in the 32nd millennium, nearly 2,000 years after he'd been entombed. It was at this point that the High Lords of Terra recognized it as the state religion of the Imperium. The Church would gain a permanent representative amongst the High Lords, and its enormous amount of influence over mankind would continue to spread. With this, the Imperium of Man became a theocracy, where priests and spiritual leaders held just as much power, if not more, than the governing officials. By the end of the
Kinda like
33rd
real life.
millennium, every single imperial world would have at least one massive shrine built in his honor, and the Ministorum would launch many holy wars designed to secure their position of power, stamping out any deviations from their beliefs, condemning all who would refuse to follow in the Emperor's light as heretics. And at this time, their only major threat to controlling the hearts and minds of the citizens of the Imperium came from a second
Can I
cult
make sure I
of
get
emperor
everything?
worship known as the Confederation of Light.
Tyranid
Whereas
ones
the
I'm kind of
Ecclesiarchy held
worried
the
about.
orthodox belief that sacrifices of wealth should be
There's something
made
like-
to them in the form of tithes,
compared to these
taxes, and
guys,
other such
there's
donations,
so
in
much,
order
like-
to live a humble and blessed life, but also in that
Oh,
that
hey,
money
yeah,
could
there's
be used
Fanboy
to
there.
spread goodwill to other imperial citizens and true believers across the galaxy. And there may have been some truth to this, but mostly it was a
Do you also have the little stickers? I know that no stickers came with it. It's just like paints and like the just building it. It's kind of like just getting you into it.
Now, the Confederation of Light also believed in spirituality through poverty, but didn't want that money going to their organization. In fact, they believed very sternly in the separation of church from the governing systems of the Imperium. The ecclesiarchy saw such views as massive threats to their power, and were basically like, welp, can't be having
I'm gonna try
that
freehand it
nonsense.
and see how it goes.
Heretics. They're all a bunch of heretics. And after a few failed attempts at infiltrating this imposter cult, the organization would launch its
We'll see how we if it's shy,
Since
just
they
try
had a lot
go
more
over it.
fanatical soldiers and much deeper coffers in order to fund their war effort, the Confederation of Light was all but completely wiped out, with only a few underground cults of followers still existing. Now in nearly full control of the minds and hearts of quintillions of faithful servants, the amount of wealth and power that was accumulating within the ecclesiarchy is simply incomprehensible. They funneled this money into building ever increasingly grand and ornate cathedrals on worlds across the Imperium, to the point where many of these worlds would become what were known as shrine worlds, and became places where billions of pilgrims would migrate every year.
That's cool that it actually like functions different in the game.
More importantly, their wealth was also funded into enormous armies that would go on to fight in many more holy wars in the future. At this point, the Administratum and other governing organizations within the Imperium
How's your
model
come along,
the church
fanboy?
had such an enormous amount of control that it was able to supersede
Can't wait to see
any
it.
of the orders or edicts put in place by the Administratum. They were seen by the majority of the population as speaking with the authority of the Emperor himself, which certainly superseded any laws created by bureaucrats.
That done? Oh, nice
All
one.
of the tithes and taxes that were being collected went to the church first, leaving the coffers of the Administratum in a constant decline, leaving next to nothing.
Also, Panda,
to
feel free to
actually
join our
accomplish
Discord if you
anything.
want.
The ecclesiarchy began setting up its own laws, placing its own representatives as governors.
We have a few people that are into it, so
and started raising tons of new
I usually
armies.
play games
They
in
nearly
stream,
had
but
full control over the Imperium
this
at
is
this
my
point. And in order to gain back
doing
some
this
of
for
the
a bit.
power and influence that the Administratum had lost, they made the decision to basically infiltrate the ecclesiarchy. They made
I think we'll do
sure
this
that
every so
members of the
often, and then
church
we'll do like
elected to
games
hold
as well.
powerful
So
positions were either secretly loyal to the Administratum or at least had their loyalty bought and paid for. This would lead to a series of completely incompetent leaders that probably ended up doing an enormous amount of damage to the people that lived under their rule. But the Administratum saw this as necessary for the continued existence of the Imperium as a whole. The Ministorum, frustrated by the financial impact these campaigns by the Administratum had taken on them, declared that they would move their
my
seat
wife
of power
Martina thinks
from
the
Holy
nuns are
Terra
sexy
to a
too.
planet known as Ophelia 7, one of the richest planets in the Segmentum, only really being eclipsed by Terra itself and Mars, completely moving their base of operations 10,000 light years out into the galaxy.
They all have that fuck ass
was
bob
a
as well.
massive undertaking that cost an inconceivable amount of tax dollars. But the church saw it as worthwhile because after the move, they were finally
We have a
rid
big
the
flow here, actually,
Administratum's
where I live.
bureaucracy and intervention tactics, and they quickly
About to
regained all of the
eventually.
lost funds and power, and then, yet again, raised even more powerful armies and fleets, becoming potentially the strongest military force in the entire Imperium. Their militant branches were collectively referred to as the Frateris Templar, and in the 36th millennium, the battle for control over the Imperium between the ecclesiarchy and the Administratum reached a boiling point, and the Imperium would enter a new age, the age
No,
of
no.
apostasy.
All I have is
The
this
ecclesiarchy
this
ruled like
base.
this for hundreds of years,
One.
until a new ecclesiarch,
The
Gregory
instruction
XI,
says use
was
this,
elected.
so
He was a deeply spiritual man that saw the move to Ophelia as misguided. He felt that all of the faithful should work together for the betterment of the Imperium,
which I think
and
is
thus
kind of like
declared
one. It's
that
just
the
without the
ecclesiarchy
spray.
would be moving back to Terra. Now, the Cardinals of the Ministorum did not like this one bit, considering just how much had been spent getting them out there in the first place. And judging on their coffers, it had been incredibly successful. But the new ecclesiarch could not be swayed, and thus the move was initiated, and the head officials of the ecclesiarchy returned to Terra once again, stretching their coffers to the absolute limit. Not surprisingly,
nice.
his rule did not last much longer than this, as he
I was
found
thinking
dead
that's what
shortly
it was.
later, having been apparently assassinated through food poisoning. This is where one of the most hated, feared, and all-around notorious characters in all of 40k.
Although I might get the
enters
spray
story.
cans
The
eventually.
madman known as Goad
If we just had like
Van
way
Dyer.
quicker.
Van Dyer was the
done.
361st head of the Administratum, a position he managed to gain through a campaign of blackmail, bribery, espionage, and assassination. He had a deep hatred for the Ministorum and set in motion a plan to gain
Ministorum.
control of it. He did this by taking possibly the weakest man to have ever lived, Paulus III, and selected him
That's
to
fucking
become the new
staying.
ecclesiarch. any that would stand in the way of him getting the position would mysteriously disappear or meet an unfortunate end. After Paulus successfully became the new ecclesiarch, rumors immediately began to spread in the higher echelons of the Imperium of his apparent degeneracy and
I think I
horrid
got
personal
spray
pastimes.
paint one.
Van Dyer led a force of armed soldiers
The
to
primer.
infiltrate the shrine
Maybe just
palace
a quick
and
hit.
gun down any that stood in their way. The official report that he gives was that when him and his men kicked in the door,
They're not that
Paulus was
pricey, though.
engaged in some form of
Apparently they
horrific
last for a while as
blasphemous
well.
act and had to be put
Because they're so
down.
small.
After which, Van
They're
Dyer
just
declared himself
done.
as the new ecclesiarch, which effectively gained him control of both the administratum and the ministorum, which at this point in time made him the most powerful man the Imperium had ever seen next to the Emperor himself. He then set about on a crusade against the ecclesiarchy, purging any
Like, this set
groups
that I
would
got was
deny
like
his
50
claim as
something, and it was like,
ecclesiarch. Now, even before this
it's like a
happened,
really good like starter
Van Dyer
kit.
was known for being unstable, despite the fact that he was definitely shrewd and cunning.
It came out like paints
But
and
from
everything.
this
It's
point
insane.
forward,
Like,
his insanity
wait, now
would
to
begin
dry,
to
then I can
increase
send you a pic. Oh,
exponentially.
nice one, nice one.
He was known to frequently go into bouts of madness, where he would frantically spout gibberish and have full-blown arguments.
But yeah,
with himself.
fanboy, I'm writing like
If
doing
anyone
all this in
overheard
blue
this
and
asked
then
questions,
going doing like
he would claim
the
that
bits
the
after.
emperor was speaking directly to
because this
him,
is a base. Like,
or if he couldn't be bothered, he would just have them assassinated. He would appoint either other equally insane individuals that believed in him, or weak-willed people that he could control into positions of power to further spread his dominance over the Imperium. And I know this is a Sisters of Battle video, and I just spent a whole bunch of time talking about specifically not the
so
Sisters
you
of
need a
Battle.
different one. Yeah, I know that.
So
I know.
thankfully, to get back on topic, this is where they enter the picture. You see, it was around this time that one of Van Dyer's scribes
I got this
formed
one because
into
I
a
just want to
religious
like
sect of warrior
dip
women
my toes in it
known
and
as
kind of
the
like see if
Daughters
I
of
can
the
do it.
Emperor, on a little-known backwater
But I'm really
island
enjoying it though.
known as San
That's
Lior.
that's a
These
plus.
women were said to have remarkable military
And these ones are always gonna be
prowess
special to me
and
because they're
were
my first
fully
ones.
100% dedicated to the worship of the Emperor.
Like
Van
from
Dyer
scratch.
and his armies went to San Lior to see the women for himself. When they arrived, him and the great retinue of soldiers and war machines marched onto the small town the women called home. At the gates, he demanded to be let inside, but the daughters proclaimed to him that they answered only to the Emperor himself and would open the gates for no man. Now, just about everyone who knew Van Dyer was 100% ready for him to explode into one of his crazed fits of rage. But seemingly out of character, he smiled and was incredibly calm. He said, "If I can prove to you that the Emperor speaks
It came
true,
with
will you
like
hear me out?" The
all
game master
these.
relayed this information to the daughters, and they agreed to let him and a small contingency of his men inside. He was met by Alicia Dominica, the leader of the daughters, and the women that she led. He pulled out his rosary holding it in his hand. He told one of them to shoot him in the chest. He said the Emperor will not allow me to be
This one.
harmed. His
The
request
black
was
as
granted,
well.
and a las
Then
pistol
I-
shot was fired at him. There was
I got
great
a Blood
blinding
Angel
white
one and
light
then this
that
like
consumed Van Dyer's entire
Datum
physical
one.
form. And when the light dissipated, Van Dyer stood there unharmed. The daughters dropped to their knees and sweared loyalty to him, seeing him as a messiah figure.
I think I would want to play
worshipped.
as the
Now,
sisters
none
in
of
the
this
game.
is true. Van Dyer was a madman, but he could be incredibly convincing when he wanted to be. The Rosarius was a personal refractor field, a force field-like device. No one on this backwater world had ever seen such a thing, so he used this to deceive them. And surprising absolutely no one, the degenerate renamed them from the Daughters of the Emperor to
Okay,
the
let's have a
Bride.
look. Oh man, that's sick. That's actually sick. I like the colors that you want to wear. I like the hawk. Looks so good. Post that in the general Discord as well, actually. Let's give you permission to go in there. Hold on. There you go. We have an art section in the Discord there, so if you want to post anything, just throw it in there, like, you know. Looks pretty good though, fam.
And used them as his personal retinue and bodyguard from that point forward. The bride's martial prowess was beyond exceptional, having no fear due to their
I like
unshakable
that the guy has a hawk.
and when combined with the ornate and high-tech weaponry funded by the
Like an
Ecclesiarchy
eagle or
and
something
the
like that, I don't know what it
Administratum's
is.
coffers, they were an incredibly deadly fighting force to behold.
That's
and
from the
would
Age
end
of
up
Sigmar,
defending
isn't
him
it?
against several different assassination attempts. What followed next was a dark period within the
I remember
Imperium's
saying that
history,
yesterday.
marked by war and famine, where Van Dyer unleashed his armies against anyone and everyone for even the slightest of offenses, and many referred to his rule as the Reign of Blood. The Imperium seemed doomed to repeat the mistakes of the past, and once again was in peril of
I can
collapse.
show my team
This
that
was
as
a
well.
period where every faction within the Imperium ended up getting sucked in by Van Dyer's madness, and at one point, a combined force of Adeptus Mechanicus, as well as 4 chapters of the Space Marines belonging to the Imperial Fists, the Firehawks, the Soul Drinkers, and the Black Templar, began to attack the ecclesiarchal palace. Their goal, to rid the Imperium of Van Dyer's tyranny. But this is a video about the sisters, so we're gonna skip ahead to where they come in. As in a twist of fate, it would be the brides of the Emperor who would end up putting down the tyrant themselves. You see, the only Imperial faction who really hadn't gotten involved at this point were the Custodians. They didn't really consider themselves part of the Imperium. They were soldiers and guardians of the Emperor and the Emperor.
Oh, they're like god people,
choosing
aren't
not
they?
to involve themselves in the machinations of the Imperium unless they deemed it the God Emperor's will to do so. But as the true scope of Van Dyer's reign of blood became apparent to them, they couldn't stand by idly anymore. A group of the Custodians made their way inside Van Dyer's palace, where they were eventually intercepted by the brides of the Emperor. Some accounts state that the brides dueled with the Custodians, while others state only Mina, champion of Dominica, fought the lead custodian, Longinus, to a standstill. Other accounts state that only mere threats were leveled at one another. Whatever the case may be,
they're like that
Longinus
strong,
sought
it's
to prevent
insane.
any further bloodshed than necessary, and asked the sisters for a parley. In doing this, he ordered the other custodians to stand down and lay down their weapons. He spoke with the women, attempting to appeal to their faith, that Van Dyer was nothing but a bloodthirsty tyrant, and the Emperor would have never ordained something as vile as his reign. The brides were not swayed by this. Their faith was unbreakable, and were prepared to fight them to the death. As seeing no other option, the custodian made one more attempt to convince them, leaving the men under his control as hostages. He took Alicia and her
absolutely
5
butcher my
personal
own
bodyguards
stuff.
through a series of secret underground passages that led to the Imperial Palace. The women that accompanied her were named Catherine, Lucia, Mina, Silvana, and Arabella. And remember their names, because they're going to be important later. His
That's
goal was to
really
bring
good.
them before the Emperor himself.
I can't wait to see you
And
do the
I
sisters.
can't accurately
And
put
the
into
set that you have
words
is mad.
what a big deal that is. No one had been permitted audience with the Emperor's body in thousands of years. The custodians were offering these women the opportunity to literally stand before and commune with their god. Now, what exactly happened that fateful day inside the walls of the Sanctorum Imperialis is known only to those 6 women and the God Emperor himself. But when they emerged, it was said that their eyes burned with anger and wrath. Dominica proclaimed Van Dyer as a monster, a heretic, a twisted blasphemer that had corrupted not only the ecclesiarchy, but the sacred order of the daughters themselves. They had been used and shamed by the epitome of filth and swore vengeance upon him. They cast off the moniker of brides and once again became the daughters of the Emperor. Longinus led them back to the shrine, and the women broke into Van Dyer's office. Alicia unsheathed her power sword and issued an impassioned decree of heresy at him. You have committed the ultimate heresy. Not only have you turned your back on the Emperor and stepped from his light, you have profaned his name and almost destroyed everything he has driven to build. You have perverted and
It's
twisted
so cool.
the path he has laid for mankind to tread.
Look at the armor
As
though.
your own decrees have stated, there can be
They
no
look
mercy for
flames,
such
though,
a
don't they?
crime, no pity for such a criminal. I renounce your lordship. You walk in the darkness and cannot be allowed to live. Your sentence has been long overdue, and now it is time for you to die. And don't get me wrong, Van Dyer is an
How
absolute
badass is that
monster,
speech?
a reprehensible character. But his final words here were actually kind of amazing. Absolutely out of his mind and completely divorced from reality, he stared her down and proclaimed, "I don't have time to die. I'm far too busy." Alicia swung her sword, beheading the tyrant and thus ending the reign of blood. With the end of Van Dyer's reign, the Imperium began to piece itself back together. A man named Sebastian Thor would end up becoming the new ecclesiarch, and he had actually met with the surviving members of the Confederation of Light, the target of the ecclesiarch's first holy war. Their humble vision of Emperor
Oh,
worship
yeah.
ended up replacing that of the Temple of the
damn
Holy
it.
Saviors theology.
You lucky
Thor would
bastard.
go
I
on
wish
to
I can have
severely
that.
limit the church's power, and once again,
It's like
separated
170
from the
quid though,
administratum,
because it comes with
even
like so
storm
much
from
shit.
that point forward would still be a powerful organization within the Imperium.
It's insane.
But it wouldn't be completely dominating. He would also
Does it
go
come
on
with
to
the
limit
tank
the
and
church's
stuff?
military power by disbanding the Frateris Templar and issuing a decree that said that the church would have no men under arms from this point forward. A cleverly disguised
gonna go over and
loophole as
wrap it
he
up, yeah.
replaced the previous military powers of the ecclesiarchy with the daughters of the Emperor, who from that point forward would be known as the Adeptus Sororitas, and whose militant order would be collectively referred to as the
You lucky
Sisters
prick.
of Battle. And just a quick footnote here. The no men under arms thing is kind of old lore at this point, and in more recent interpretations of this time, Thor seems to still hold that limiting the church's military might is incredibly important. But instead of them existing through a loophole, he sees the sisters as a necessity and that their skills must be utilized for the good of humanity. Events like this in 40k normally have a whole bunch of different interpretations, so whichever one you choose to believe in this particular instance is totally up to you. After this, the Sisters of Battle, led by Dominica and her 5 bodyguards, would take part in many new wars of faith, spreading the Emperor's light to the dark corners of the galaxy and swearing oaths to destroy the heretic.
I really want to like do a vehicle as well,
wherever it may appear. They were provided incredibly
because that set comes with one, doesn't it?
And would end up becoming some of the staunchest defenders of mankind that had ever existed. After a point, Dominica oversaw a reformation of her sisterhood, as she wanted to prevent another ecclesiarch who would arise in the future from having full control over the Adeptus Sororitas. The forces were split between Terra and the ecclesiarchy's former seat of power, Ophelia 7, and this would end up creating 2 separate covenants: Covenant Prioris, that was based on Terra, and Covenant Sanctorum, based on Ophelia 7. Each of the covenants was absolutely massive, housing tens of thousands of sisters, with more and more recruits joining over time. After Sebastian Thor ended up passing away at the ripe old age of 112, his successors would follow in his wake and over time declare that the 2 covenants be split into smaller militant orders, as each of them continued to grow larger and larger. It was Dominica herself who first established the sisterhood, and when the first splitting was ordained in the year 378 of the 36th millennia,
that's why I have to do a donation goal for it, because it's like so expensive.
Of Covenant Prioris, the Order of the Ebon Chalice. The same year, Catherine would become the founder of the Order of the Fiery Heart, which would eventually be renamed to the Order of Our Martyred Lady with her death. Lucia would go on to found the Order of the Valorous Heart,
some of them do.
Founded the Order of the Argent Shroud. Almost 2,000 years later, after Dominica and all 5 of her bodyguards had long since passed away, and had officially been declared as saints by the ecclesiarchy, in the 38th millennia, the 2 covenants would split one more time. Covenant Sanctorum would create the Order of the Bloody Rose, founded in honor of their patron saint.
I'm pretty sure some of them do have helmets, so.
Would create the Order of the Sacred Rose, named in honor of their patron saint, Arabella. By the time of the 41st millennium, all of these orders have existed for thousands of years, and all of which have incredibly unique histories, cultures, and ways of conducting war. So let's talk about.
I think their helmets look really cool.
The Order of the
They have like a skull look to them as well, don't they?
And widespread of all of the orders.
Has like the white on it.
The Adeptus Sororitas. They have sworn an oath of vengeance to hunt down the heretic wherever it rears its head, from the galaxy's core to the galactic rim. Although all sisters have been taught
these guys are
gonna
be so complicated.
Fighting in the Emperor's name is a glorious thing. The Sisters of Our Martyred Lady take this much further. So much so,
there's so many like little
fearlessness
bits
in battle can often be mistaken as a death wish, as the order has developed what seems to be a cult of martyrdom.
Well,
such a sister will stand defiantly
against
the
enemies
of the Emperor, with bolter in hand and revving chainswords, shouting hymns to the God Emperor as they slay heretics, Xenos, and mutant alike. When she dies, her death will be met with cheers from her surviving sisters, as to witness such a glorious and heroic death is a gift that should be celebrated. The surviving sisters will fight harder and faster.
You don't have to defend, but it's okay.
Be drawn to the battlefield.
Unless
miracles that can only be explained as such
you don't know
manifest for the warriors she left behind, swiftly turning the tide of battle in the sisters' favor. To the ignorant observer, the way the Sisters of the Martyred Lady fight may seem unorganized and a bit chaotic. It is said they spread across the battlefield like wildfire, units spreading in every direction, with bolter and flamer in hand. Their fighting style, however chaotic it may seem, leads them to be incredibly quick and efficient, and they are able to switch tactics in but a moment, keeping the enemy confused and not knowing exactly how to react.
Let's try.
The reality is that these women are incredibly disciplined, and they follow the teachings of Saint Catherine to a letter, a woman who was a devout
Let's try. Okay, so
faith, but of military doctrines as well. Whereas the Order of the Martyred Lady practices the
I wish I had like actual gold though.
The Order of the Valorous Heart is one that's much more representative of his stoicism and forbearance.
You can actually
Their
do,
founder and matriarch Lucia was said to be the opposite of Saint Catherine,
proper,
whereas Catherine was characterized by her burning passion. Lucia was stoic, level-headed, and calculating. Her and the sisters that would follow in her path would be an immovable, unbreakable anvil to complement the fiery, crushing hammer of Saint Catherine's order. Through Lucia's teachings,
the gold looks so nice.
Would forever have to carry a great burden and would never be allowed to
let's do black and do like the bits in between.
Because of their mistakes, they would have
the
to
armor, like
which took the form of aggressively seeking out worlds rife with corruption and marked by a lack of faith.
Those black bits in between the armor.
By witchcraft and chaotic.
God, they're hard to open.
And through the fires of war, would they systematically grind them down. In battle, the Order of the Valorous Heart employs a number of tactics designed to cripple their enemies' supply lines and infrastructure, choosing to target the means of production, and systematically destroying fuel reserves, poison water supplies, and burst any pipelines containing radioactive or hazardous material. In addition,
It's
they
just
would
trying to
seek
get this, like,
destroy any food supplies, including plants and animals that their enemies
consistency,
could gain
right?
sustenance from, transforming the environment into a barren and hostile wasteland, locking the enemy in place and pushing their offensive lines. They would do this to grind them down in a war of attrition, a style of battle that the valorous heart is incredibly skilled in. And the way St. Lucia would end up
Here we
gaining
go.
martyrdom was by meeting a terrible fate, as she was captured by heretics and tortured for a long period of time, having her eyes gouged out and being forced to listen to the suffering of everyone else the cult had captured. She stoically endured countless agonies until eventually succumbing to her injuries. The cult would then begin to spread the rumor that in her final moments,
Oh, not
she
too
had
bad, not too
renounced her
bad.
faith and rejected the God Emperor. Their triumphant mockery was short-lived, as her fellow sisters then spent the next several decades hunting down every last one of them. What the sisters ended up doing with the captured cultists is unknown. However, it is said that ever since that day, deep within the undercrofts of their sanctuary, the sisters have been putting their knowledge of life extension
doesn't it?
and pain
Okay.
enhancement to great use. The women of the Valorous Heart wear their battle scars with pride,
There is,
as through pain and suffering, they feel
there's one in the
approaches
shop
to
down
their
the road
matriarch, enduring just a
that
sliver
literally
of what
costs,
she must have had to go through.
like,
It is said that they never use anything to reduce the pain of
70,
their injuries.
75,
Because
that's
to
why I
do
have that
so
up.
would be seen as hypocritical, as Lucia had taught them that through their faith in the Emperor, they could overcome any amount of suffering. The Order of the Bloody Rose, founded in the name of Saint Mina, represents the embodiment of the
it's the
Emperor's hatred
sisters.
and anger towards heretics. They do not exist to save the innocents of the Imperium, nor do they care for the ramification of their bloody and violent crusades. They exist only to slaughter the guilty. Since the beginning, the Order of the Bloody Rose has been seen as a sisterhood of executioners. Now, normally when the sisters of other orders are deployed to a world in order to purge it of heretics, in their wake would be members from the Order Hospitaller and Dialogus, the former bringing aid to the wounded civilians of the world, and the latter to catalog and record the events of the battle, and thus the subsequent liberation of the planet. When they would follow the Sisters of the Bloody Rose, they would find nothing but death and destruction. So clinical was their righteous butchery that the sisters wouldn't even stop for but a moment to set free their enemies' captives. Their only mission, to cleanse the world through blood and fire. Using the blood of her fallen sisters, the Canoness Superior, known as Saint Mari, would end up penning an article known as the Thorn Treatise. In this document, she declared that the path of the least evil lies always in the swift obliteration of those who oppose the faith. Mercy in any form must come after the venting of righteous anger.
Right,
The sisters
first
of this
ankle
order
bit,
are taught
boom.
to harness all of their violent tendencies in anger. Every feeling of hatred or impulse
That's why I'm going for
to
these,
enact
because like
violence is seen as a
really
valuable
small.
tool
I'm
to be
trying to get
unleashed
the.
upon the enemies of their faith. Whereas other orders
I can do that, I
participate
can do that.
in silent contemplation and prayer, the sanctuaries of the Bloody Rose are instead filled with the righteous bellowing of litanies at the top of their lungs, each verse dripping with rage. The order has an affinity for close combat, often utilizing tactics and maneuvers to bait their enemies into overextending, before spinning about and slamming into them, crashing into the enemy lines and crushing them under their boots. To the outside observer, this may look like a bunch of blood-crazed barbarians drunk on slaughter, but the reality is that they are incredibly disciplined, and that hatred and anger is something that they have learned to hone and unleash only at the moment before a strike. Through this, they can throw bare-fisted blows that shatter skulls and explode organs. The Order of the Bloody Rose believes that only by spilling the blood of the unfaithful shall a world be purified once again. The Order of the Ebon Chalice was the first
Fine, I
order
can
of
go
the
over that
Sisters
bit
of
anyway.
Battle, and was founded by none other than their matriarch, Alicia Dominica, the woman who executed Van Dyer and ended his reign of blood. Whereas other orders reject their ancestors or see the mistakes as something that requires a lifetime of penance, the Order of the Ebon
How do you get it
Chalice
in be- like,
seeks to adhere strictly to
in?
their teachings, only deviating from them to incorporate more
The
modern
gaps.
weaponry and armor, and has a great deal of respect and veneration for the original teachings of the Daughters of the Emperor, from before Van Dyer corrupted their order. Dominica was so deeply respected that
You know
all
what I
of
mean?
the Sisters of the Ebon Chalice wished to do all they could to emulate her greatness. As the executioner of Van Dyer, she was seen as the God Emperor's champion. Now, where they get their name from is actually pretty interesting. You see, there was this ancient artifact known as the Grail of Ages that Dominica herself would carry into battle. It was a black goblet that was said to represent her communion with the Emperor. There are very few records that exist that tell exactly what this relic was capable of, many of which making seemingly impossible claims. One account says that during one battle in particular, the energy of the Grail was unleashed, and every single psyker on the entire planet, not just on the battlefield, the entire planet, immediately burst into flames.
Yep.
There's another account of a different battle that states that Dominica poured
On
out
the
the
website.
contents of the goblet, and when she did this, the emperor was able to speak through her. He uttered but a single word, but there was so much psychic power behind its syllables that an
Send me a
entire
link there and
army
have a look.
was instantly destroyed. The Sisters of the Ebon Chalice do not speak of the Grail, and if pressed, they say that it is simply a representation of all of the secrets great and terrible that Dominica learned on that fateful day when the Emperor spoke to her, and that they and they alone must now be the bearers of that sacred knowledge. And in order to protect the secrets of the Grail, the Sisters of the Ebon Chalice will pursue any recorded record of an account of the Grail's existence or its secrets, purging and destroying these records whenever they are found, condemning any of the scribes that penned the work and thus have knowledge of the Grail's secrets as heretics. Much like the Order of the Ebon Chalice, the Order of the Argent Shroud derives its name from an ancient relic. You see, their founder and matriarch, Saint Sylvana, ended up getting murdered before she could unleash her first ever War of Faith. Now, this is an event that is shrouded in mystery, and even to this day, it remains kind of unclear what exactly happened to her. But most accounts make mention of some kind of assassin. Now, the most credible stories say that the assassination attempt was not meant for her, but for Dominica herself, and Sylvana, the ever-loyal bodyguard, threw herself in between Dominica and the killer, sacrificing herself so that the Emperor's chosen could live on. And super mysteriously, 7 days after her body was laid to rest, she suddenly vanished, the only thing left being a ghostly imprint of her skeleton on her death shroud. Nowadays, this shroud is considered a holy relic to the Sisters, and it's where the Order gets their name. The Sisters of this Order
We're on the website now, so English. How do I? Oh, not America. Ireland. Free delivery over €50. I fucking hope so. I sure hope so. Let's have a look. If you select and then armies, okay, fuck. There we go. Adeptus Soror. There you go. Combat Patrol. This one. Kill team. Look at all this shit, man. Exorcist. Look at that one. That's insane. That one there is actually insane. She's on a floaty thing. The one that I saw. I think the shop that where I live has the one that you have. Like it's just older stock, I think. He still has one, I think, or it's like a newer version of it.
That actions speak louder than words, and through great deeds are spirits purified. Their founder was said to be remarkably brave, constantly throwing herself into danger in order to protect those around her. Now, interestingly enough, not a single account of her ever speaking exists. There are no transcriptions or even written documents from her, and the Order emulates this by going through long periods of silence, speaking only to pray or sing hymns. Now, their prayers differ from that of their sisters in other orders, where they don't really ask for the Emperor's blessing or protection, choosing instead to use these moments to proclaim their imminent deeds that they will perform in his name. Even outside of these periods of silence, the women of this order seldom ever speak, even to convey tactics amongst their allies, something that makes fighting by their side incredibly difficult for many armies outside of the Order. They choose to instead trust in the divine guidance of the Emperor, rather than formulating complex plans and stratagems. And it may seem counterintuitive, but it actually kind of tends to be quite effective, as the sisters throw themselves into battle against much larger armies and are able to smash through defensive formations and weather the barrage of gunfire and artillery batteries, almost as if the guidance of the Emperor is allowing them to act on an instinctive level to support one another. The Argent Shroud is famously known for speedy assaults and specialize in hit-and-run style tactics. Their strike comes as fast as lightning, followed by a rapid withdrawal, leaving their enemy shaken and unable to reorganize before the sisters regroup and hit them again. They have a reputation as some of the deadliest shock troops within the entire Adeptus Sororitas, and much like their beloved matriarch, their faith ends up shining even brighter when surrounded by enemies, as every single one of them would throw themselves in harm's way in order to protect her fellow sisters, just like their patron saint Mina would have done. Whereas the other orders that we have spoken about seem pretty brutal in how they wage war and interpret the will of the Emperor, the Order of the Sacred Rose stands aside from the rest of them and represents the Emperor's hope for mankind. They sing songs of hope and salvation rather than that of holy wrath. The women of the Sacred Rose believe that only through faith is victory achieved. If somebody's faith is strong enough, they can do the impossible. They can bend the laws of the universe and command the stars themselves to destroy the enemies of mankind. They believe that every battle they have ever or will ever participate in has been preordained according to the Emperor's great plan, that their victory was completely and utterly inevitable. Now, even in the event of their death, the sisters of this order believe that a single martyr can ignite the fires of faith in thousands of souls, their hearts and minds coming together in a force more powerful than any weapon that has ever existed. Arabella,
their sets
was an
look really
incredibly
good
calm
though.
and serene woman, with a demeanor that would never falter even in the face of the untold horrors of the galaxy. It is said that if it had not been for her, the original meeting between Dominica and the custodians may have ended in bloodshed. It was her serene tranquility and the ability to touch the hearts of all of those around her that set in motion the events that would see mankind freed from the reign of blood. It was Arabella's mission to break the shackles of fear and doubt that bound the faithful and set free humanity from the corrupting nature of the heretic. Now, when she lived amongst the stars, it was only the foolish and ignorant that would mistake her serenity for weakness, as there are a lot of accounts of heretics literally exploding the moment her eyes fell upon them. To the heretic, beholding her radiant glory in its true form was so incredible that it caused their eyes to melt from their skulls. Of all of the saints, it's possibly Arabella that ended up performing the most miracles during her lifetime. The sisters of her order set forth, bringing salvation to the previously held worlds of the faithful that had long since been thought lost to the darkness. The Sacred Rose would crusade to these worlds and butcher the cabals and cults that kept the citizens in chains. When the sisters of this order marched to war, they do so to the combined song of thousands of their voices, singing beautiful hymns to the Emperor, hymns that raise the spirits of the true believers and induce an overwhelming feeling of dread and despair
They're so
in the heretic.
cool.
Recorded instances of miracles
Like, for no
occurring
reason,
are
they're
a
just
really
so
big
cool.
deal, and out of all the orders, the Sisters of the Sacred Rose tend to see them manifested most often. Since this happens so regularly within the order, many members of the ecclesiarchy will often follow them into battle, eager to witness the hand of the Emperor working through his daughters firsthand. Now, on one hand, this may seem a little bit frustrating, to have a whole bunch of taggers-on, untrained priests and scholars following true warriors into battle. But Arabella taught her sisters that the Emperor often acts through the least of his servants.
That one was really animated,
So
that
great was she
picture.
that the unwashed masses came to her in droves, and through her faith, she would turn these groups into true armies of indomitable warriors, even though most of them had never held a weapon before. Because of her radiance, these men and women were ready to stand and fight for their world. The Order of the Sacred Rose stands as a beacon of hope in a galaxy that always seems on the brink of collapsing. They stand ready to protect the faithful, and somehow seem able to appear whenever and wherever they are needed, even if a distress signal was never issued. Now, many would question how such a thing is even possible, but the faithful know the truth. And as I mentioned earlier, the Sororitas is not just a military organization. They have many non-combat orders as well, such as the Orders Hospitaller, Famulus, and Dialogus. The Order Hospitaller provides nurses, surgeons, and doctors to every branch of the Imperium's military, taking to the most grueling of battlefields in order to cauterize wounds and saw off gangrenous limbs. They show the Emperor's mercy and compassion to the faithful, taking care to heal the wounds of those
So they're like healers, they're basically like
they are some of the best medical specialists in the Imperium, and aside from their role in the battlefield,
they're kind of like paladins
also
actually.
house and catalog truly enormous libraries of medical knowledge, not just on human anatomy, but additionally on the anatomy of every known Xenos species, as well as the inner workings of all of the weapons that they utilize against the forces of mankind, in order to better understand how to heal the wounds inflicted by such terrible instruments of war. Their extensive knowledge on the anatomy of Xenos is incredibly important when it comes to developing new ways to fight them. And on a slightly darker note, confessors and inquisitors from the ecclesiarchy will often utilize their medical expertise in their interrogations, healing any injuries the interrogator may inflict on an individual expected of heresy.
When I get
They'll
more
literally
paints, I'm gonna go
surgically
back over
reattach
these.
limbs and heal mortal wounds just for the interrogator to sever or rupture them again. The combination of both of these individuals'
do what
particular
I
skill
have.
sets being more than enough to draw out a confession from even the most stoic and
Because
resilient
some silver
of
would be really
heretics.
good.
Now, the sisters that serve within the Order Dialogus are trained scholars, advisors, and translators of every text imaginable, whether that be of the various human languages that have been found throughout the galaxy in the present and in ancient texts, but also in the heretical writings of aliens and chaos worshippers. Their life is dedicated to collecting as many pieces of ancient scripture as they can, as there is always a chance that some ancient alien species cataloged even the briefest of encounters with the Emperor, and the acquisition of such a text, even if it offers only the slightest glimpse into His Majesty, is a holy quest of great importance. All of the texts that the Dialogus
They
encounter
really get
are
off on that,
translated
don't
into
they?
High Gothic. They're incredibly skilled and have built a massive library of knowledge on every enemy the sisters have ever encountered. They are incredibly adept at finding threats in seemingly innocuous and benign symbolism and messages, as the heretic is incredibly clever and doesn't necessarily just spell out their evil plans on paper for all to see. The Sisters of Order Famulus are skilled diplomats and advisors. Their silver tongue and incredible ability to network allows them to connect with the noble families of the Imperium and keep them united in a common cause of doing the most good for the Imperium whenever possible. They play a critical role in brokering deals and agreements between a vast array of powerful households and factions, overseeing the negotiations around supply lines, mining operations, formation of fighting forces, arranged marriages between powerful families, and just about anything else you can think of. They are women that pull on the strings of the Imperium's aristocracy and ensure that each and every noble household has everything that they will need if they are called upon to fight and die in the Emperor's name. Because these women have immediate access to so many powerful people, they also serve the role of being spies and informants for the ecclesiarchy, keeping a watchful eye on all the pieces on the board. It is they who know if a player in the great game makes an illegal move, or tries to do anything that
they're
would
kinda
go
like
against the
referees as well.
ecclesiarchy's goals, whether that take the form of espionage, squandering of resources, or even full-blown heresy. Without the women of Famulus, treachery may be allowed to fester and grow until it is too late to be stopped. And although not normally given a lot of attention, there are dozens, if not hundreds, of smaller orders within the sororitas as well. They don't often get focused on, as their roles don't tend to have a major impact on the macro setting. One such order is known as Order Fenestris, whose entire order is dedicated to the humble task in maintaining the illuminated armor glass panes of most of the holy shrines and cathedrals found within the Imperium, which may not seem like much, but it's definitely a holy task and a noble profession. And I'm sure the God Emperor appreciates all of their fine work. Whether or not the Emperor has truly become a god, or even if he was all along, despite his claims to the contrary, is a much debated fact within the Warhammer 40k community. Regardless of the truth, it is irrelevant, for the entirety of the Adeptus
Yeah, 'cause he doesn't like
believes it to
religion
be
and
so.
stuff, doesn't he?
They are his holy warriors, his righteous will made manifest. They relentlessly crusade across the galaxy, suffering not the unclean to live. They will stand as defenders of mankind, a physical incarnation of his holy light. No matter how dark things get, no matter how hopeless it seems, hope remains alive in the faithful, because they know they can rely upon the sisters to deliver them salvation. Their wars of faith will continue for thousands of years to come, their righteous work never ending, so long as the heretic, the witch, the alien, and the mutant continue to draw breath and threaten the Emperor's kingdom through the sin of existence. One by one,
The sin
they
of
will be hunted
existence.
down and destroyed, purged in his name. If you enjoyed this video and you want to
kinda
see more
badass, I'm
like
not gonna
it,
lie.
then consider dropping a like on it and subscribing to the channel. If you're watching this video within the first week of it being
There's
posted,
everyone
stay
bloating,
tuned because we're
dude.
doing a little bit of a giveaway. And if you're watching it way out in the grimdark future, and by that I mean after August 27th, 2022, then don't worry about everything that comes after this.
Who knows?
I have a
Pretty
pretty vivid
vampires.
memory of the first time that I was told that the Blood Angels were actually
They are the sons of the angel, the blooded host, the defenders of humanity. They are strength,
the speech.
they are nobility, they are the blood angels, and I say to you, there are
funny.
no more loyal or determined servants of the Emperor alive today. High Lord Baldus Bile, to Ordo Astartes Inquisitor Nazalkin. The Blood Angels are one of the 21st founding legions of the Space Marines, initially known as the Ninth
Like David
Legion
Attenborough
before the
doing it.
second founding divided the Legiones Astartes into chapters of 1,000 Space Marines each. Renowned across the galaxy for their ferocity in battle, the Blood Angels are also feared for the curse of their flawed gene seed. They are among the longest living of the Adeptus Astartes, with some of their warriors serving the Emperor of Mankind for over 1,000 standard years. Recently, the Blood Angels have faced severe losses, bringing them to the brink of extinction. To quickly rebuild their ranks, they requested a tithe of neophytes, or candidate Space Marines, from their successor chapters. The arrival of the Primaris Space Marines during the Indomitus Crusade further bolstered their numbers, though the chapter still faces unprecedented trials. The Blood Angels are the noble descendants of the most puissant and angelic of the Primarchs, Sanguinius. They are one of the most celebrated chapters in the Imperium, with their countless heroic deeds and victories known to untold billions of the Emperor's subjects. The angelic visages of their heroes adorn Gothic facades and stained glass windows in countless holy basilicas, and their portraits are cherished in illuminated tomes. Yet the Blood Angels harbour a terrible curse. When their beloved Primarch was slain by the arch-traitor Horus during the Horus Heresy, every Blood Angel was doomed to share a portion of the pain inflicted upon Sanguinius. From that day, every Blood Angel has been tormented by visions of their Primarch's last moments. As they age, these waking nightmares become more frequent and debilitating. If they do not fall in battle, every Blood Angel will be consumed by these soul-searing visions, descending into a madness where they endlessly witness the death of Sanguinius, powerless to intervene. The inevitability of their curse ennobles the Blood Angels, driving them to seek a glorious death in the name of the Emperor and their Primarch. Despite the dark urgings to shed the blood of their enemies, the Blood Angels have remained pure and noble for 10,000 years. However, the chapter is slowly dying, as more of its brethren succumb to the red thirst, the overwhelming desire to rend limb from limb those responsible for Sanguinius's death, and by extension, every enemy of the Emperor. The death of Sanguinius is one of the most tragic moments of the Horus Heresy, for he was slain by his brother Primarch, Horus. Some believe that Sanguinius's sacrifice weakened the War Master enough for the Emperor to later defeat him at the climax of the Siege of Terror. The Blood Angels continue to mourn this loss deeply, feeling the pain keenly as Sanguinius's blood still courses through their veins. In battle, the Blood Angels are gripped by a fury born of their Primarch's final moments. For some, the thirst becomes too great, leading them to be overtaken by the Black Rage, cursed to relive Sanguinius's death over and over again until their end. The illustrious sons of Sanguinius are celebrated throughout the Imperium, their greatest heroes immortalized in marble,
Yeah, we can
oil
go over that bit
paintings,
with
and
the
tapestries adorning
thing, but I just want to get the black
cloisters.
one.
Their angel-winged Primarch, Sanguinius, is venerated on countless worlds, his perfect visage gazing down with a mix of benevolence and pity. As the heirs of Sanguinius, the Blood Angels deliver death from above to the enemies of the Emperor. The chapter strives for perfection in all it does, excelling in one particular form of warfare above all others. While all chapters of the Adeptus Astartes are masters of drop-pod and Thunderhawk assaults, the Blood Angels have become synonymous with the flawless execution of aerial assaults. They utilize a unique vehicle of mysterious origin, the Storm Raven gunship. This vessel, a lighter cousin of the Thunderhawk, compensates for its smaller size and reduced weaponry with superior speed and maneuverability. The Blood Angels quickly recognized the value of the Storm Raven gunship and incorporated it into their arsenal, even as the Adeptus Mechanicus took centuries to examine and debate its standard template construct imprint. The chapter's forge perfected its fabrication methods, allowing the gunship to be deployed throughout their entire force. While other Astartes chapters are just beginning to integrate the Storm Raven, the Blood Angels have already mastered its use, refining aerial assault tactics that others are only starting to learn. The Blood Angels' doctrine of aerial assault culminates in savage close combat, whether delivered into battle by Thunderhawk or Storm Raven gunship, or in the troop bay of a Rhino, Razorback, or Land Raider, the Blood
Yeah, we can go
Angels are
back over
nearly
that bit.
unmatched in their mastery of close assault. This proficiency is partly due to the gene seed of Sanguinius, which grants his sons an exceptionally
I missed you
long
get into
lifespan
Warhammer?
even
Well,
for space
I'm in it
marines,
now.
allowing endless solar hours of practice and countless battles to hone their skills to perfection. However, the Blood Angels are driven to close combat by more than just tactical necessity or battlefield doctrine.
These are going to be
Chapter's
shit, but
reliance on
there's no
blood
going back.
and the
True.
need to cleanse it to keep the floor at bay exerts an irresistible hold on the Blood Angels. In battle, they are drawn to spill the blood of their foes, and their ordinarily noble demeanor can transform into twisted, rage-fueled savagery. This is known as the Red Thirst, a condition every Blood Angel experiences. For many, the Red Thirst is a prelude to the ultimate expression of the Flaw, the Black Rage, where the state becomes permanent and all-consuming. The Blood Angels and their successor chapters, collectively known as the Sanguinary Brotherhood, are unique in that their gene seed imposes
but
an
I'm just-
unusual and ultimately tragic
I'm a little bit. I
flaw
like to be a
upon
perfectionist
each battle
sometimes.
brother. For most chapters, service begins as a neophyte, with the initiate advancing through the ranks based on survival and battlefield prowess, eventually attaining command of a
At least I can
company,
go back over
a
some bits
specialist
as
role
well.
such as a
So.
chaplain or even the position of chapter master. The Blood Angels, however, undergo a different journey, one rarely understood by outsiders. They possess an almost supernaturally noble, saintly
Can I get some in that
countenance,
little?
with features that are handsome and pure.
In,
This transformation is all the more remarkable considering the chapter recruits from the short, stunted men of the tribes of Baal, who suffer from stigmata, lesions and carcinoma caused by radiation poisoning. Their dramatic metamorphosis into saintly neophytes is made possible by arcane blood rites. Over
No,
a
I just mean like
lifespan
little
far
mistakes you can go
exceeding that
back
of the
over
average
with
Astartes,
stuff.
a Blood Angel hones his skills, but with each battle, the Flaw's influence grows stronger, and the urge to spill hot, steaming blood intensifies. As this
Oh,
urge intensifies, the battle
That's true,
brother
actually.
is driven to spend longer periods purging his own blood within the crimson embrace of his transfusion casket. After centuries of service,
yeah, the Blood
he
Angels
must
look
spend
so
long
cool.
hours
Though.
having every drop of his blood scrubbed clean. Eventually, the Blood Angel may feel the stirrings of something deeper, the rage descending not at the culmination of battle, but before it. These are the first echoes of the Black Rage. While most Blood Angels fall in combat before succumbing to it, those who cannot resist are forced to join the chapter's infamous Death Company.
Oh, really?
Fate is a merciless master, and no matter how his
like
prey might
the-
struggle, no matter
I like
the
Blood
heights
Angels,
they
and I also
reach,
like the
or the trials they conquer, he will eventually bring them down.
nuns with guns.
The Blood Angels fought against the destiny inscribed in their
Because they're
genes,
sexy.
defied the role the Emperor had chosen for them,
And the only
and
kind of
dared
gold
to
one I have
believe
is
they
this.
could overcome the darkness shadowing them. They
was
transformed
our
the worst of
gold.
mankind into something radiant and true,
So it was-
rising above their origins to stand
see how
as
this
the
goes.
guardian angels of the fledgling Imperium. However, within their triumphs lay the seeds of their downfall, nurtured by the envy of the fallen War Master Horus, who saw in
He
them
came with the kit,
everything
so-
he had forsaken. The initial blow of the Horus heresy
I like it more
brought
like
the Blood Angels to their knees, and the
goldy
ensuing
gold, if you know what I
tragedies
mean.
shattered their resolve and left them broken. Yet the nature of the Ninth Legion ensured that they did not
that
succumb
makes
to
sense?
despair or darkness, but rose again and again. What
Yeah,
might
they're really
Sanguinius
cool.
and his sons have achieved were it not for the dark fate cast upon them
Sexy
by
as fuck.
treachery and genetics? What magnificent bloom could have emerged from
Wait,
their
actually-
bloody origins? That unrealized future is yet another casualty of Horus's civil war, leaving the Blood Angels to endure the slow decay of their noble lineage with the stubborn pride that defines them. There are many noble legends of the Unification Wars, recounting the battles where the Emperor's newborn Space Marine legions swept aside all who opposed him. Among these tales, none mention the Ninth Legion, only grim rumours and half-heard whispers. While the first companies of other proto-legions fought in Albia, Indonesia and France, alongside the massed ranks of the Thunder Warriors, the Ninth Legion was absent, given a role both vital and unsightly. The old Ninth Legion served the Emperor as an inferno serves a general on the battlefield. They did not conquer but ravaged, growing as they went, a weapon that could not be directed or controlled.
Where'd I buy my kit from? It's the if you know the starter set,
the early Space Marine legions
the introductory
fought as
kit.
mere vanguards to larger forces. A sharp
I got it from the
alongside
Warhammer
blunt
shop itself.
sledgehammer of the armies of unification. They were the pivot on which battles turned, waging small-scale battles by precision
There was one in
strike
Dublin.
and audacious raids. The 9th Legion was cast in a different mould. Even in their earliest days, they were among
There's
the
a local shop that
proto-legions.
sells them as well.
And when they waged war, it was like the sudden arrival of a tsunami, sweeping away opposition with brutal assaults. They were deployed to the most dangerous war zones of terror, to those cursed regions ravaged by the radphages and chem strains of old night, places where only the most twisted and debased breeds of mankind still lived. In the wastelands beyond history's spotlight, they held the line, alone and unnoticed, while the Emperor pursued his grand conquests. This grim fate was no accident, no arbitrary choice by a distant general, for each legion was granted genetic tools to fit their roles by the Emperor, and the 9th Legion was no exception. While other legions took only the best recruits, princes and champions among the conquered techno-barbarian nations of old Earth, and produced few initiates, the 9th Legion accepted the hordes of dispossessed and broken, transforming them into an army of angels. Scarred by countless generations, mired in the rad zones and sunken fortresses of terror's poisoned wilds, these beings had become more monstrous than human.
Oh, true.
Twisted and mutated.
No, because we're in there and
hunted them down.
they got me hooked because
Yet from
they let me
these
build
lowly
something.
origins emerged a breed of Legiones
like,
Astartes,
You know,
who were uniformly tall and fair. Their features
one of
sculpted
the
with
free
stern
figures
elegance.
they do.
The unique genetic template of the 9th Legion's
Bastards.
unknown sire
Crack deal.
seemed to favour the twisted and warped.
The crack
inflicting
dealers, I
immense
swear to God,
pain
man.
on those inducted into the Legion, a trial few could withstand.
I swear to God.
Only those who had survived
I
the
swear to
horrific
God.
red zones and poisons
Well, they put me at
years
ease anyway because I
endured
was
the
really
process
nervous
to
about it.
become
So
Astartes of the 9th Legion, resulting in a limited number of recruits. However, unlike other legions, the 9th cast their net wide, claiming entire tribes of wastelanders, prisoners of war, and a long train of hopefuls seeking the miracle of transformation.
okay,
The
that's not too
bloody-handed
bad. That's not too bad.
apothecaries worked tirelessly, wielding their knives without rest to maintain the Legion's fighting strength in even the most hellish war zones. Though the legend of the 9th languished, its ranks did not dwindle. As their numbers grew, so did the dark rumours surrounding them. For the Emperor's legacy had bestowed upon them
Just to start off with, I'm gonna just do that.
These gifts earned them a new epithet among the Emperor's mortal armies, the Eaters of the Dead. After each battle, the elegant forms of the 9th Legion haunted the field long
up a
after
little
the
bit there.
fighting had ceased,
Yeah.
seeking out the finest among the fallen and consuming their flesh
It's the only
and
one I've
blood.
fucked
Many
up on.
victories that brought unification to old Earth were marred by the sight of blood-smeared angels stalking the fallen and wounded enemy champions across corpse-choked fields. Few among their detractors understood the purpose of this grim fixation. This too was part of the Emperor's grand design. Through the genetic augmentations that transformed them, the 9th Legion could steal their enemies' power, genetically absorbing their knowledge and skill through their
This thing is so
apophygeal
handy.
implants
This like little
by
ripper
consuming
thing.
the foe's bodily tissues. In the desolate battlefields where they fought, often isolated and far from aid, this trait provided the 9th Legion with priceless
Get a little grip of my
making
men.
even the rawest recruits battle-ready. Yet their macabre reputation clung to them like a shroud.
I love to see
overshadowing
your
their
models.
achievements.
I think I like to-
Created to fight monsters alone in the darkest places, they risked becoming more foul than the creatures they fought. As the wars of unification swept through the Sol system like a storm, so did the 9th Legion. Despite being one of the largest early legions, bolstered by widespread recruiting during the War for Old Earth, the 9th
There's,
found
like,
no
inside
place
bits as
among the
well.
hosts assaulting the Jovian moons or the resource-rich inner worlds during the early Great Crusade. Instead, their flag was planted among the artificial moons
Not
of
bad, not
baleful
bad.
Neptune, whose labyrinthine tunnels and dark halls were the lairs of Xenos raiders
You can
and
go over
the
those
last
bits there as
genetically
well.
debased human colonists of that distant outpost. There was little to gain here but time,
Because I remember I was in the
Precious time
shop
for
and
the
I was
emperor
like,
to
I'm
claim
just
the
so nervous
orbital
about making mistakes
shipyards
on
of
them.
Saturn and the allegiance of Mars,
And the guy was like,
for
oh
which he
well,
needed the raiders
doesn't
and
matter, you can
mutants
just
of the
go,
outer
like,
worlds held in check.
most of the time you
To
can just
that
go back
end,
over.
he sent
Start
the
again.
9th Legion forth to die. 12,000
You know?
warriors of the 9th Legion, all seasoned veterans of the Terror Wars, vanished
Show me how to
on
do
the
it, you know?
moons of Neptune. As the Emperor and his grand armies subdued Saturn, Mars, and the inner worlds,
He was really nice,
no
actually.
word
the guy
came
was
from
in
the
there.
9th Legion, leaving their fate a mystery. By the time these conquests were finished and the Emperor
'Cause
turned his
I always-
attention to the outer system, most
I always got the
expected to
impression that they would
find
be,
only
like,
frozen corpses.
kind of like,
However, upon reaching Neptune,
what's the word?
they discovered the 9th Legion alive and well.
It's a lot of minis.
Despite losing many of their original number, the force's size remained nearly the
Send in
same,
Discord. Oh,
bolstered by
I see.
recruits from Neptune's barely human population. Where others might have faltered, the 9th Legion had only grown stronger, rising like a bloody phoenix from the ashes of defeat.
Ooh.
In those tumultuous days, the Legion was a constantly evolving force,
Keep me updated on that.
primarily composed of line
Can't wait to see
infantry
that.
geared for the brutal
That'd be really
chaos
good.
of close-quarters combat. This was a role in which the 9th Legion excelled, always preferring sudden, overwhelming charges
I really want to get the
to
sisters
protracted battles of attrition.
combat.
They
patrol.
understood the power of their fearsome reputation in war, often staging attacks at dusk or dawn and adorning their
Okay, that's-
storm
I
grey
kinda
Mark
messed up
II
there, but I can go
power
back over
armor
with
with
the-
macabre imagery. They frequently fought unhelmed, their angelic faces streaked with blood to unsettle their enemies. Some companies even incorporated the Legion's secret bloody rituals.
As you say,
into
the
their
first one's
battle
always going to
doctrines,
be.
tearing apart foes on the battlefield or indulging in bloody feasts to break enemy morale and incite panic.
That one wasn't
Time
too
and
bad.
again, the 9th
That one-
Legion
that
was
side is
cast
way
into
better than
the
this one.
crucible of destruction, emerging each time as strong.
I suppose
as
it's all about
before.
angles, I guess.
They took what they needed from the enemy to continue fighting, and found victory where others saw only defeat and despair, though it left them changed. On the silent black battlefields of the Kuiper Belt and the endless wastes of rust, the 9th Legion fought and survived where others could not,
Good.
holding the line in the Great Crusade's early uncertain steps. Malcador the Sigillite took note of their exploits and dubbed them the Revenant Legion,
Can't see,
a
but
title reflecting
I'm
both the
sticking at my
superstitious
tongue.
awe they inspired and a commendation.
Yeah, I can go over
of their
that with the blue.
bravery. The Sigillite was just one of many senior officials in the early Imperium's Divisio Militaris
fine.
who felt uneasy with this incarnation of the Legiones Astartes. They lacked the prestige and open popularity of their brethren, such as the celebrated 8th Legion or Horus's own 16th Legion. A dangerous and unsightly
Oh, man.
weapon to be unsheathed
This is
only
our
in dire
boost.
need and then quickly
Alrighty.
hidden away, the 9th Legion often
Be
found
worth it, though.
themselves alongside other less favoured legions. With the savage warhounds and the oft-forgotten 4th Legion, they shared a bitter kinship, though it was rare to see these legions assembled together. Yet it was the efforts of these ingloriously practical and blood-stained warriors that laid the foundations of the Imperium. Few songs are sung in praise of their deeds, but their contributions were vital to the golden empire the Emperor sought to build. Again and again, the pride of the 9th Legion was shattered on the battlefield, yet their records consistently highlight the same few warriors and
It's
champions.
fine, it's fine.
Some remembrancers and historians have interpreted this as evidence of a long tradition of heroic figures, compiling these records into epic stanzas that form a single legendary narrative. However, the true
Fine, it's
reason
fine.
for the recurring names in the 9th Legion's battle
It's
records
where
is
it's
far less noble. From its inception, the 9th Legion fought in the most extreme conditions, adopting practices born out of sheer necessity that might
How
otherwise be
much
seen
water
as
to put
monstrous.
on these too, so it's
One
like,
such practice, influenced by their unique genetic makeup and the harsh
Too much is, like,
environments they endured,
doesn't
was the
stick properly.
consumption of fallen captains by their followers, to preserve their accumulated skills and experience. As both an honour and a practical measure, it became customary for new recruits to take the names of those whose abilities they had absorbed, and for lieutenants to adopt the names of their fallen captains. The resemblance among the 9th Legion's members was so striking that outsiders often failed to notice this subtle form of immortality. The most notable example is
Okay.
Isidore Ossuros,
That's not too bad.
believed to have served as the 9th Legion's first and only master, other
I'm
than
just trying to think.
Sanguinius himself. Historical records suggest that Isildur commanded the 9th from the Unification
What else is gold
Wars
on them?
to the discovery of Baal in the year 843 of the 30th millennium, but closer examination reveals that the name died numerous times, only to be assumed by another warrior. Over countless battles, this practice became an honoured tradition within the Legion, a visceral ritual that bound the survivors together despite their diverse origins. Yet, as much as it united the 9th Legion internally, it also distanced them from their allies in the Imperial Army and other legions. In the years before Sanguinius's return, several Primarchs expressed disdain for the 9th Legion's practices, though they could not argue with their battlefield success. This legacy of mistrust and barbarism was a burden the 9th carried, imposed upon them by the brutal necessities of their mission. In the early years of the Great Crusade, as the Emperor's fleets ventured beyond the Segmentum Solar into wilderness space, they encountered battlefields that could shatter the sanity of mortal men. Among these dreadful places, termed zones mortalis in the formal language of the Divisio Militaris, none were more horrifying than the world known to history as Quiburan. The first expeditions to Quiburan disappeared without a trace, with 4 full regiments of the Imperial Army's Veradun regulars swallowed up, leaving a flank of the Crusades' galaxy-wide advance exposed. In response, the Emperor deployed his own terrors to confront whatever beasts lurked there. 3 companies of the 9th Legion's Astartes were dispatched to Quiburan ahead of the expeditionary fleets to support the Veradun regulars. The world was a wasteland of irradiated sands, inhabited by degenerate mutant tribes and ruled by the techno-barbarian warlord Eclobia. These tribes not only engaged in relentless conflict, but also used each other as a primary food source, sustained by a brutal economy of ritual bloodshed and cannibalism. It was these mutants that the beleaguered Imperial Army troops encountered, their ranks decimated by hordes of barely human mutants armed with primitive clubs and picks. The corpses of the fallen were hauled back to flickering fire pits to be cooked by night. For 3 solar months, the trenches of the Imperial Army repelled the mindless onslaught before the storm-grey drop pods of the 9th Legion descended from the sky, wreathed in black smoke. Crashing to the ground, the Revenant Legion broke through the mutant throng with contemptuous ease, relieving the embattled Veradun troopers. The 9th Legion attacked the cantonments of local tribes, their superior arms and armour allowing them to seize control of the northern mountain ranges, casting out the indigenous mutants with uncompromising brutality. In the initial phase
also
of the 9th Legion's campaign on Quiburan, they encountered little organised resistance, freely conquering territory. For several solar months, the 9th Legion ravaged Quiburan until news reached warlord Eclobia, who swore an oath to eradicate the invaders. Eclobia commanded an army of mutant chattel whose numbers were beyond count and over whom he wielded such terrifying power that they would throw themselves to their deaths rather than face the horrors unleashed by his enslaved sorcerers. As the 9th Legion crossed into Eclobia's territories, the resistance from indigenous forces intensified until the 9th was drawn into full-scale battle. Initially, they easily quashed any bands of savages striking at the edges of their line, but these soon became an unending deluge of bodies, threatening to overwhelm and encircle the 3 companies. The 9th Legion braced themselves to repel the tide of mutants, whose hideous deformities allowed them to rend ceramite with their tortured flesh, and whose sheer numbers caused the earth to tremble at their approach. Though the Legiones Astartes fought valiantly, each battle brother taking down scores of enemies, the overwhelming numbers of the foe gradually forced them to retreat. In an attempt to regroup, the 3 companies of the 9th Legion formed a spearhead, aiming to break through the mutants and reach the distant banner poles that marked the position of the Horde's brutish commander. As the spearhead of the Legion formation neared Eclobia's encampment, the horrors of Old Night were unleashed, reality rippled and tore as the cracked skulls ensorcelled chattel summoned indescribable horrors, causing massive casualties among both the Astartes and the mutant horde, shifting
That's
the
kind of
battle's
cool.
tide.
Like that with the gold.
Unable to combat such a threat, the 9th Legion warriors
Interesting
faced the
gameplay or
choice
just
of
like-
retreat or total
Both.
annihilation.
I'm looking into
A
both.
decision that might have
Because we have a
doomed
big club
other,
here where I
more
live, so
honor-bound legions, but not the pragmatic Revenant Legion of old.
you know.
The legionaries turned and carved a bloody path through the throng with toothless chainswords, broken blades, and fragments of their fallen comrades' armour. Nearly 2 companies were lost in that monumental battle, leaving the survivors to question how they could endure without reinforcement or resupply. The staggering losses necessitated a reorganization of Legion resources among the remaining 380 legionaries, reflecting the utilitarian and consequentialist nature of the early 9th Legion's psyche. Key to their survival, the Apothecarian was reformed and expanded into a combat support formation, ensuring the propagation of gene seed and the survival of the remaining legionaries. Reforged in the crucible of war, far from the path of the Great Crusade, the orphaned companies of the 9th Legion resumed their campaign at a more measured pace. They conducted squad-based shock assaults on enemy encampments before withdrawing to avoid organized reprisals.
Okay.
The campaign soon stagnated into a pattern of thrust and counter-thrust. The war fought on the back foot to bleed the foe while being
The
hugely
gameplay looks really good as well.
This conflict,
You're basically just
later
playing
known as
an
the
actual
Banquet
war,
of
like I guess.
Tiburon, raged on for 12 standard years, largely forgotten by the wider Imperium. The 9th Legion dismantled the world's tribes piece by piece.
But then there's
through
bits I want to do
close
just for the
quarters
like
combat, avoiding
hobby section of it
full-scale
too.
engagements. In the early years of this desperate struggle with no resupply in sight,
Uh-huh.
the 9th Legion adopted practical measures for survival. Raids against local mutant tribes on the northern continent became acts of domination rather than destruction. These mutants, if useful, were pressed into the Legion's service. The hardiness of the 9th Legion's gene seed allowed even these irradiated and grotesquely mutated beings to be suitable candidates for induction into the Legion. Their children, once bred as mere meat stock for their techno-barbarian overlord, were transformed into angelic warriors through the implantation of Sanguinius's gene seed. Additionally, the Legion's apothecaries encouraged the practice of cannibalizing the war dead for sustenance, benefiting the Legion while denying resources to the enemy. These strategies enabled the 9th to replenish its ranks and continue without contact with the wider Imperium, a feat unmatched by any other Legion. Through this strategy, the Legion steadily took ground from Eclobia, depleting his armies and food supply, while using these resources to rebuild their own strength. However, the Legion's methods may have gone too far in the name of survival. A diary recovered from the equipment of a missing officer of the Veredan regulars refers to the 9th as the Charnel Feast, a name that became popular among the rank-and-file mortal soldiery of the Great Crusade before being suppressed with Sanguinius's arrival. The same diary hints at a grim fate for the 46th Veredan regulars, suggesting they were used to sustain the Legion either through literal consumption or by providing the flesh needed by the charnel priests, what had become of their apothecarian, to create new warriors. Other recovered journals claim that the populace of Qibaran viewed the legionaries as devils from their myths, stealing children and feasting on corpses in a manner more barbaric than even their masters' ritual cannibalism. The native population feared that their own magic had unleashed the Imperium of mankind, speaking of it in hushed tones as the force of their own undoing.
It's not too bad. It's not
In
too
the
bad.
12th Terran year after planetfall, the final battle was inevitable. Eclobia, weakened by years
Some bits I
of
need to go back
starvation
over.
and surrounded
Ooh, jeez.
in his fortress spaceport by a replenished force of nearly 1,000 legionaries and their degenerate serfs, attempted once more to unleash his slave sorcerers. The massed, unarmored novitiates of the Legion, recruited from among the tribes of Qibaran, bore the brunt of the attack, while the off-world veterans of the
I'm gonna try and do what I
Legion
can with
targeted
what I have.
strikes against the warlocks, overwhelming the warlord's defences with sheer numbers. With his sorcerers dead and his fortress in ruins, Eclobia attempted to flee in a primitive spacecraft, only to be intercepted
got
by a
silver
squadron of
actually as well.
Imperial cruisers bearing the heraldry of the 7th Legion in orbit. His life ended under their guns. The Imperium had finally come to reclaim its warriors, expecting to find a world brought to compliance and ready to accept the Emperor's law. Leading the fleet, Rogel Dawn, newly reunited with his Imperial fists, arrived on Qi'Baran to discover a ruined world of the Imperium's making. Furious at the report of the Ninth Legion's actions, he refused to accept the compliance of Qi'Baran as the dream of Imperium his father had envisioned. In the charnel feast, Dawn saw monstrous misdeeds, but also the resourcefulness of capable warriors in desperate circumstances. Reprimanding the surviving Ninth Legion warriors for their questionable judgment, the Praetorian of Terror ordered the city of Baran razed and burned, erasing the sins of the Ninth Legion before any remembrancer could set foot there. With each triumph, the ominous legends surrounding the Ninth Legion grew and spread.
It's in blue again.
They became the spectres, haunting the wild fringes of the Great Crusade's advance, the terrors unleashed by the Emperor to forge his path across the stars. It was a role and title they accepted with grim pride, never
Looks really
shirking
good.
the mantle they bore in his name, and never balking at the task.
I love their
to them. Every campaign was
I love the way they
conducted
look red
with a
and
cold
black.
fury that set them apart from the Emperor's other attack dogs and hidden assassins.
I think it looks really good.
Their quiet, brooding hunger for blood and death was as terrifying as it was effective. Once committed to battle, the Ninth did not relent, did not retreat, and could not be stopped. They fought until the enemy was completely annihilated, ignoring thoughts of mercy or the need to build an empire rather than a graveyard. Few among the mighty and renowned welcomed their presence on the eve of battle, for the stench of death and madness clung to them. Without a patron among the returning Primarchs to guide them and give
It's so
purpose
hard to
their
know,
conflicts, the Ninth
what's the
Legion
right,
slipped further into isolation and infamy.
I still don't
The
know.
Legion became a strange blend of imperial doctrine
What's
and
the right
gruesome
thickness
ritual,
or whatever? I
its
don't know.
ranks filled with charnel cults and bloody prophets of war, the superstitions of countless worlds given power by the nature of their transformation and left to fester on the worst battlefields of the Great Crusade. Worse still, the sight of these blood-soaked angels, tall and striking, perhaps even more so when covered in battlefield gore, often led those they conquered to worship them, fearing to anger the red angels that had come. It was a descent into madness that threatened the very existence of the Legion. Unchecked, they would become a greater danger to the Imperium than the monsters they were created to hunt. The seeds of this destruction were already sown. Many watched the Legion and its commanders with growing suspicion, distrustful of the immortal Ninth and its blood-soaked killers. The Ninth Legion's 14th Company was sanctioned by Rogel Dawn of the Imperial Fists for its actions during the Second Siege of Yarant, where the Ninth Legion's warriors took to killing and consuming prisoners on the fortress walls to demoralize the enemy and secure intelligence. While the Imperial army lodged a grievance against the Ninth Legion after reports emerged that mortally wounded soldiers of the Malagant Rifles Regiment had been slaughtered and drained of their blood by the Legion during the retreat from Shedim, rather than left to the mercy of the enemy.
There we go.
Such brutal actions seemed of little concern to the Ninth Legion, but added weight to the arguments of those who claimed they should share the fate of the two other failed legions. Fragmented by the demands of war and the needs of the Great Crusade, the Ninth Legion became outcasts among the Brotherhood of the Space Marine.
There we go, there we go, there we go, there we go.
They fought in small, isolated companies, each fostering its own distinct
This
version
one's
of
gonna be hard now.
that had spread throughout.
Imperial Fists mentioned. I know a lot of
Their force
people
remained
like
largely
them. They're gonna
composed
fist
of
you.
line infantry and jump troops, not for tactical reasons, but because the Divisio Militaris was reluctant to supply them with more potent arms and munitions. In response, the Legion increasingly relied on its own macabre methods to win battles, valuing victory more than the respect of their peers. Their bitter pride in what they perceived as the jealousy of others sustained them, but also dragged them further into disrepute. The Ninth Legion teetered on a knife's edge. They were still a necessary, albeit bloody, part of the Emperor's plan to conquer the galaxy, yet that conquest would not last forever. Eventually the Ninth would become more of a burden in the new Golden Age the Emperor sought to build than a blessing. A reckoning loomed for the Ninth Legion. They would either be reborn anew, changed and not diminished as they had been before, or they would be ended and erased from history. At this critical juncture, a scout flotilla of the Great Crusade discovered an otherwise insignificant world of ruins and deserts, a world whose moons had their own legends of a bloody angel, a world called Baal. After the Emperor created the Primarchs, the ruinous powers absconded with the infant demigods while they were still in their gestation capsules, carrying them through the warp. Though unable to destroy the Primarchs due to the Emperor's potent psychic and physical protections, the demonic powers did their utmost to pervert the Emperor's creations to their own nefarious ends. Thus, even the finest of the Emperor's works were tainted from the very beginning. The gestation pod housing the infant Sanguinius ultimately landed on the moon of Baal Secundus, in a place now known as Angel's Fall. Of the young Primarchs stolen from the Emperor and spirited away through the Imperium, few found themselves in conditions that could be considered fair.
Are the salamanders? Oh, are they the
particularly ill-favored?
I like them because of dehydrated pits.
Once a thriving hub of mankind's ancient interstellar empire, the Baal system had been reduced to a radiation-scorched wasteland of ash and dust due to its people's folly during the Age of Strife.
Are they the ones that are like really
on
kind?
Baal Secundus, where Primarch Sanguinius was cast adrift, a fragile remnant of humanity eked out an existence.
The green.
These feral, warlike, post-apocalyptic tribes survived in the wastelands
through
war,
boys.
Plunder, and scant foraging from the deserts. Sanguinius spent his
They're like a bottle
days
green,
in the
aren't they,
deep
or something like that? Like a
little is known of this period, for he never spoke of it in later years. Undoubtedly, he endured hardships that would have killed full-grown men, slew mutant creatures of the wasteland that even the desert tribes avoided, and survived the radiation that would have incinerated
like that.
flesh in mere minutes. The length of Sanguinius' sojourns alone in the wastelands remains unknown.
Isn't the front
But by the time the tribe of Baal Secundus discovered him, he was a young boy, almost of age by the tribesmen's standards. Sanguinius' life nearly ended then and there, for great white wings, akin to those of an angel, had emerged from his back. Whether Sanguinius' wings were a result of Baal's mutagenic influence on his post-human genome, an effect of his journey through the warp, or part of the Emperor's deliberate design, remains a mystery known only to the master of mankind. Among the tribesmen who discovered the Primarch, many initially wanted to kill the child, mistaking him for However,
the aliens,
in all other aspects, he appeared as a perfectly formed human child. Eventually, compassion prevailed and the child was spared. Sanguinius quickly adapted
all of them
to his
hate each
new
other.
life among the tribe, as was typical of his kind in similar situations. His strength and resilience soon earned him a place within the tribe known as the People of the Blood, or simply the Blood, like all the tribes of Baal. The young Sanguinius was a prodigy, growing swiftly and absorbing everything his adoptive parents could teach him. It is said that even as a child, he killed a giant fire scorpion with his bare hands, showing no fear in the face of the colossal beast. As Sanguinius grew, so did his wings, becoming mighty pinions capable of bearing him aloft on the desert air. He could walk without a rad suit in Baal Secundus,
this guy has like actual wings.
Deserts, and could shatter massive boulders with a single blow of his outstretched hand. He soon excelled his teachers in the use of all weapons. When a wandering band of feral mutants attacked the tribe, Sanguinius killed them all, though they numbered over 100. This was the first time
Blood Angel Red
had seen him
as well.
truly angry, for he felt his comrades' lives were in danger. When the blood rage overtook him, Sanguinius was indeed terrible to behold. His mighty Primarch powers awoke to their full extent, and a nimbus of light played about his head. He grew to manhood rapidly, troubled by dreams and ill portents of death and blood and the arrival of a grim and unknown king from other worlds.
Look at this shit.
He fought against the mutated subhuman creatures that prowled the deep desert and the raiders from other tribes with the same single-minded focus he gave to his loyalty to his new people, the Blood. Unlike the other Primarchs, there was no long war of planetary unification on Baal Secundus, no glorious campaign of conquest to prove the young demigod's worth. The legend of the winged warrior spread across Baal, telling of a tall, fair warrior, unlike the stunted, radiation-scarred people of the moon. Ferocious in war and wise in peace, he seemed a vision of past glories returned to Baal, a promise for the future that had been all but forgotten among the Blood. Despite Sanguinius's
Look at that.
denials, he became a
You
godlike
can't really
figure
see it.
to
It looks
his
better
foster
in
people,
person.
and warriors from across the wide desert came to fight at his side. Under his guidance, they pushed back the mutant tide,
Insane
giving
looking.
humanity a respite on Baal Secundus. Within a few short Baalite years, each an endless scorching summer, a vast host gathered at the great angel's side, seeking to learn from his words and to shelter beneath his wings.
No.
He became the master of his world, not by force or conquest, but by the acclamation of a desperate people. Baal was a world long dead, its landscape reduced to ruins and radiation-blasted wastelands by the forgotten wars of Old Night. The initial expeditionary fleets had bypassed it as a target for the Great Crusade, because despite its location along a major stable warp current, it held no real industrial value and had only a sparse population. Yet it was here in the year 843 of the 30th millennium that the Emperor would rediscover one of his lost sons, the Primarch Sanguinius. Like many of the Primarchs, Sanguinius had forged a bloody peace on his adopted homeworld, shaping the primitive tribes he found there according to his ideals. His legacy was one of peaceful conquest tempered with justice and knowledge, a stark contrast to the path taken by the 9th Legion that would soon be his. Thus, when the Emperor came for his missing son, and starships once again filled the skies of Baal, it was not to find a king of battle and war, but an unwilling god. Having long foreseen his father's arrival and the many consequences it would bring, Sanguinius met the Emperor alone, without the entourage of worshippers or the warriors sworn to his service. Alone, he knelt before his father and asked only for the lives of his followers, fearing the wrath of a man who had vowed to topple all religions. Seeing in the winged Primarch a servant of rare talents and unwavering loyalty, the Emperor granted his wish.
Big blood.
The imperial truth was withheld from Baal, and no imperial ship would set down on
Looks
the
more
second
red in
moon of
person.
Baal again, except at the behest of Sanguinius himself. The blood would continue
Not
to
too
live
bad.
as they always had, partly as a surety against the great angel's pact. Sanguinius departed to begin his service to the Emperor. Sanguinius was to learn the art of war at the side of Horus.
I'm gonna try
accompanying
and
the
do
Primarch
the
and his lunar wolves to understand how
Ultramarine
battles were
logo.
fought among the stars, and to grasp the workings of the vast imperium that
And I
the
say
Emperor
try
was
very
constructing.
loosely.
As Sanguinius developed a bond of trust with his mentor and brother, the 9th Legion was finally
Is the only
summoned
kind
to
of
meet
white
their
again?
new and rightful master. Scattered across distant war zones, it took many solar months to locate and recall each band of the 9th Legion. The gathering took 2 standard years and 4 solar months to complete, culminating on the storm-ravaged world of Tegar. There, an army of grim killers with angelic faces assembled, eager for a new conflict. The captains of the Revenant Legion, known as the Great Crusade's blood-soaked angels, gathered as Stormbird transports bearing the mark of the lunar wolves descended from orbit. From within emerged warriors, clad in the white of
Oh yeah, I
Horus's
got
own
the
legion.
I got this.
Yet the figure leading them was not Horus. By his stature, it was clear he was a true son of the Emperor, one of the Primarchs. Great white wings unfolded as Sanguinius revealed himself to his gene sons, his
This is
sculpted
gonna be hard.
features mirroring those around him. He beheld the assembled warriors of the 9th, each bearing the scars of relentless battle both on their proud faces
Oh
and
no.
deep within their spirits. These were not men to be impressed by the pomp and ceremony of his escort,
Oh,
nor by mere
Jesus.
strength of arms. Amid the rain and
Hold on,
storms
hold
of
on.
that
I think I can
far-off
fix it. Hold
world,
on.
the
So
winged
just
Primarch took a knee before the rough-cast killers and scarred blood drinkers. Rather than demand their allegiance, he offered them his own. The warriors, who had given everything to the new Imperium and received only scorn and mistrust in return, were now offered a Primarch's loyalty, given freely and without reservation. Sanguinius won their devotion with his actions.
no, I
To seal
didn't.
their
I
bond,
didn't come any of
he
them.
led the assembled legion on their first campaign together, standing in the front lines of battle where his valor demonstrated the sincerity of his pledge. The storm-ravaged 5th planet of the Tegar system, Tegar Pentorus, was the battlefield where
I'll get some,
Sanguinius
though.
fought to earn the loyalty of his legion. In the chaos of combat, he shed his blood and came to understand the true nature of his sons. Sanguinius observed the bloodlust and
I can go
eerie
back over that
hunger
again.
that permeated his legion's core, recognizing it as a reflection of his own inner darkness. The abhuman hordes
I think it's just trying to get you to like
and their
start
bestial
off with like
thralls were cut down by the 9th Legion like wheat before a scythe, with Sanguinius himself claiming the pelt of a dire Carnarvon as a trophy, and a
getting
symbol of
started,
his
like,
bond
you know.
with his sons. Amid the gore-soaked aftermath of the
I think
campaign,
you need to add water to these ones.
Sanguinius glimpsed a potential future, a crimson future of endless war, where his sons would become true monsters, enslaved by a dark and terrible fury. Yet the winged Primarch did not succumb to despair. Even in the heat of battle, the warriors of the 9th Legion retained a spark of nobility, the lingering embers of their martial pride and determination. They fought not just for slaughter, but to seize the elusive prize of victory, adhering to their own codes of honor with unyielding resolve. These virtues would be Sanguinius's weapons in the battle for the 9th Legion's soul, the tools with which he would elevate them. Sanguinius understood that no future was set in stone, that no dark fate was beyond hope of redemption. At the conclusion of the battle for Tegar, he declared, even though a darkness hangs over them, a future soaked in blood and horror, they are angels yet, angels of blood. The 9th Legion, once known as the Revenant Legion, had been reborn and earned a new name, the Blood Angels. The newly named Blood Angels did not return in full force to Baal, as that scorching wasteland had little to offer that the ruins of Terra and countless other dead worlds hadn't already taught them. Instead, Sanguinius sought the assistance of his brother Horus, who had been his mentor and friend during his initial years in the Emperor's Grand Army. Sanguinius divided his legion, now bearing new heraldry to honor their Primarch and reflect their new name, and assigned each company to fight alongside one of Horus's Lunar Wolves companies. For the next decade, the Blood Angels fought alongside these renowned warriors, witnessing the fall of countless worlds and engaging in a variety of campaigns, from straightforward wars of
This one dries like
extermination
really.
to the nuanced strategies of strike and fade operations. In the shadow of the Lunar Wolves and under the guidance of the greatest of the Emperor's Primarchs, the once outcast 9th Legion gained respect from their peers and developed a newfound sense of decorum. Every campaign served as a trial, a subtle test devised by Sanguinius and Horus to heal the wounds time and fate had inflicted on the Blood Angels. Sanguinius instilled in his sons a new sense of pride, not in sheer carnage and endless melee, but in a future
looked a bit
where
too
they stood
clean.
as exemplars of the Imperial Creed, equal to Horus's own warriors. During the year-long siege of Anaxis XII, they learned the value of brotherhood, as they stood alongside the Imperial fists against an endless tide of Hrud. On Cambriol and Prehult, they were taught discipline as they clashed with inscrutable Aeldari Reavers, and on Kentaurus Beta, they learned mercy as Sanguinius led them through the bloodless pacification of the
How's that
Kentaur
look?
colonies. With each battle, the Legion shed part of the stigma of their past and began to tread a new path. Determined to be worthy of Sanguinius's oath, the warriors of the 9th
Already see
Legion
it,
worked to
yeah.
set aside
They
the
look better in the
gore-soaked
picture.
isolation that had once been their source of pride,
Actually, I
and
want to go back
embrace
over
new
the
virtues
blood on the
their
leg.
Primarch had shown them. With fury tempered by wisdom and blood hunger restrained by discipline, the 9th Legion, when they finally returned to Baal, were no longer the rough beasts that had once stalked Terra. They had transformed into a legion reborn, embodying the nobility befitting their angel-winged sire. On the sands of Baal, the newly raised and trained contingents of Astartes, drawn from the blood, the native people of that radiation-scorched system, joined the Blood Angels. These warriors, trained and
Yeah, I'm gonna
schooled
wait
in
for that
the
to
arts
dry.
of war by Sanguinius himself, integrated with their brethren from Terra. The mixing
What I
of
do
these
is
two
mix-
halves across the many companies of the Blood Angels aimed to strengthen each other and dilute the influence of the 9th Legion's Terran past. The insatiable hunger lingered, a chained beast lurking at the edge of sanity, ever ready to be unleashed. However, the faith of their Primarch ensured they maintained a firm grip on its fetters. The Blood Angels honed their minds and wills, dedicating themselves to the pursuit of wisdom alongside the art of war.
Oh, I
They
want this one
evolved
really
into
bloody.
scholars and warriors, shedding the
Well, actually,
barbarism
what if I
of their
just...
past under the approving gaze of their winged Primarch. They
Isn't
sought
that
to
wet
prove
enough, isn't it?
themselves worthy of the future they fought for. As time passed, the Blood Angels' dark history faded from the memories of their comrades. The blood hunger became little more than a myth,
See what I'm trying to do?
a
Just kind of like flick it
half-remembered
on.
ghost story of ancient ghouls once bound in service to the Emperor. Those few
really
among
need
the
a bigger
Legion who
brush for
succumbed
that,
to
but-
its thirst or the black fury that followed were discreetly hidden, granted the Emperor's peace, or sealed away on Baal. The Blood Angels and their Primarch joined the Great Crusade as equals, looked down upon
Not too
by
bad,
none,
not too bad.
and followed the call of war to the stars.
There's a
The
proper
new
print. Oh, okay,
crimson-clad
okay.
Ninth
Oh,
Legion
Lord.
was both familiar and fundamentally changed in character. They still
Oh,
waged
okay,
war with a
okay.
fury that shook the heavens, but now it was tempered with deep discipline and sharp intellect. They favoured
So, like,
shock
it,
assaults, descending upon the enemy suddenly and without warning. However, with a Primarch's will guiding them, they utilised the full array of Imperial
me.
technology. When the angels descended, they fell from
Well,
the
there's a
sky
few
like
speckles
rain
that
of
went onto it a
fire.
bit.
1,000 burning lights against the dawn, embodying the Emperor's wrath in crimson form. Their skills extended beyond sudden onslaughts. They mastered the feigned retreat, the gun rush, and
Excuse me.
countless other stratagems. They became a fully formed legion, transcending their genetic
I don't think that's too
legacy
bad for
and
my
the
first
harsh
one, like,
lessons
you know?
of unification. This transformation illustrated the Emperor's plan for his legions, that with their Primarchs they became whole, far more than the sum of their parts.
That one, I just had to
Thus,
redo
the
that
Great
one.
Crusade
I'm going to go back
surged
over with
onward
the,
as never before. New battlefronts opened under the Primarch's
shading.
direction, and thousands of worlds were reclaimed. Throughout it all,
the shading.
Blood
Once that
Angels
dries
and
that
their
shoulder,
Primarch
but I mean,
Sanguinius fought at the Emperor's side, serving as his honor guard. Their fearsome reputation as shock troops fed a rivalry with the equally assault-oriented World Eaters Legion. Yet the Blood
I doubt
Angels
that.
were never as ferocious as the World Eaters, for Sanguinius's
That's when I showed Martina this one.
tempered their bloodlust. Of all the Primarchs, Sanguinius formed the closest bonds with Horus, Lemon Russ, and Jagatai Khan. Even in the early days of his legend, Sanguinius was regarded as the noblest of the Primarchs, ever deep in the
Jeez, you get
Emperor's
fucking
counsel.
dirty when you do this.
Even Horus, who would later become the proud war master of the
Make sure
Great
these are shut.
Crusade, sensed a purity of spirit in Sanguinius that he could never match, a oneness with their father that no other Primarch could hope to
I
approach.
think now.
While many of his brothers fought the Great Crusade for the joy of battle, Sanguinius fought to secure the golden
Sure,
era
those are
of
red.
peace and prosperity that would surely follow. His vision was the Emperor's vision, a hope for
I
mankind
think is there anything else I can add?
united in peace and prosperity.
If I had
Tragically,
silver,
it was
I could do a bit more, but
Anactor is a star system that has vanished from all Imperial.
and then I want to get
It is
stuff for the
absent
bases
from
as
any
well.
records of conquest, battle honors, or Divisio
know.
Militaris archives. Only in the
Actually,
great
Joe, I'm gonna do the
Library of
base
Terror,
black.
hidden deep beneath
Look
the
better, I
Imperial
think.
Palace and within the Blood Angel's own annals, can the story of
You
this
know.
long-forgotten battlefield be found. This tale serves as a cautionary lesson among the ranks of the crimson-clad Brotherhood, recounting an angel's
I
rage
need to get more
and a
posters as well,
legion's
but
shame.
should look that could be done in the
It
future. But I
reveals
was gonna do this
that the
black.
divide between the old Ninth Legion and the Blood Angels is not as vast as history might suggest.
Just so it
Anactor
stands out a
once
bit
lay
more, I
within
guess.
the territory traversed by the expeditionary fleets, just a short warp journey past proud Anvilus. In the past, it was a small haven of
I
humanity.
know you can get
that had
there's
endured the
paints that you can
horrors
get
of
that like
old
bubble
night.
up, don't they?
It survived by sacrificing what it
That can look
must
like
to
terrain
take
as
what it
well.
could. Its small but efficient void navy
Like it's like
laid west
textured
to
or something
neighbouring
like
star
that.
systems to sustain
Look.
its people, thriving on plunder and slaves. So effective was this strategy that by the time the first Imperial scout ships reached its borders, Anactor was not merely surviving but flourishing. So confident were its people
Not
in their
bad.
minor glory and meagre strength that they met those first Imperial scout ships with fire and thunder.
Thank you.
The first to receive word of this attack was a host of the Blood Angels, led
This
by
is from.
Sanguinius
Oh, okay, okay,
himself,
okay.
with 12 companies.
Is that the one that like kind of like
standing
is like
ready.
hey Heidi? Yeah.
Already engaged in an auger sweep of the nearby
Is that kind of like
sectors,
textured? Is it?
Sanguinius ordered their course diverted to Anactor, and the fleet was arrayed in attack formation,
Thank you.
They
Thank
broke
you.
through the void with gun ports.
I really
open
want to try the
and
nuns
cannon
now.
primed. In a brief, brutal engagement, they shattered the enemy fleet awaiting them.
Should we do the next one?
The marauder craft
Red?
of Anactor were no match for the brute battleships of the Blood Angels. In short order,
I don't
the
know if
Ninth
the
Legion
blood will
pushed
work,
on to
though.
the first inhabited body in the
Blood
system,
Angel.
encircling it
will
with
this-
an iron cordon and lighting up the sky with the immense firepower
Will that one
of their
work?
cannon. A small
For
airless
making a
orb,
Blood Angel?
Anactor
I mean, it's Blood Angel
Extremis,
red, so...
housed a garrison of Anactoran soldiers in subsurface habitats,
Try that with the next
their
one.
presence revealed only by the guns that dotted the sky above them. With no civilian presence to worry about, Sanguinius ordered an immediate assault to deny the enemy time to regroup. He committed the 19th, 67th, 171st...
Yeah,
and
but what I'm saying is
94th
if we put a
companies
base
to
down
attack.
and then put that over,
A brief but precise bombardment cracked the surface
they work
and
differently.
shattered
Oh, okay,
the
okay, okay,
defenders'
okay, okay.
guns, clearing a path for the drop pods and assault craft that followed. Brutal close-quarters combat
I'll just keep on
ensued in
doing
the
the-
cold
this
subsurface
then.
halls of Anactor Extremis as the Blood Angels carved a bloody path through the enemy. The foes they encountered were heavily cybernetically augmented, barely recognizable as human, and dubbed Iron Bulls by the Imperium's troops due to the sensory horns grafted to their skulls. Known
Oh, I can do
among
that.
their own people as the Kusariku,
Oh.
they wielded
Already
primitive
did the
plasma
blue though,
casters and
didn't I?
grav lances, holding against the Ninth Legion for 6
I mean, I have a
solid
lot of it,
hours.
so I mean...
Each intersection of the labyrinthine tunnels was fiercely contested with tenacious courage and skill. The same story of
I
fire
can just go
and
over it,
blood
I guess.
played out across the desolate outer worlds of the system. The Blood Angels relentlessly harried the enemy, who resisted valiantly, fighting to the bitter end at every outpost and imposing a high cost on the Ninth Legion for each world conquered. Amid the asteroid fortresses of the system's outer belt, the Iron Bulls staged ambushes and feigned retreats, drawing the Ninth Legionaries into craters rigged with blasting charges, sacrificing themselves to impede the
Also,
Legion's advance.
They're kind of like...
On Anactor Median,
I get you.
the gateway to the inner system, the Iron Bulls drew a line
Oh,
with
there we
their
go.
own bodies,
There's my first...
fighting a sprawling battle across 50 kilometers
First
of
one done.
shallow
I'll take a better
acidic sea
picture on my
and
phone.
rocky archipelagos. They rode great,
It's not bad for my
multi-legged
first
augmetic
one.
frames like mounts into battle, stalling the
This
advance of
shoulder
nine
pad
Blood Angels
is a bit too
companies.
bright because I
The
had to
Ninth
redo
Legion
it.
warriors came to admire the courage of their
Um,
foes and took great pride in the victories won against them. Sanguinius
Not bad,
himself ordered a 6-hour ceasefire to honor the enemy's valor.
Pause this for a second. I'll try and get a better picture actually on my phone. Should we try that with the bone rate then? Or rate bone or whatever the fuck it's called. And you know? See if that works. Actually, I'm gonna... Hold on. I think that's dry now anyway. It's mad the way that works, the shading ones, the way they dry like that is actually insane. But from now on I think I'm gonna use the for the bases. We get the spray cans because it'll be much easier. Especially if I'm gonna get like one that's a bit bigger, you know? Especially if I get like a whole like what's it, combat patrol? It just saves so much time. No, actually, do you know, we'll look up a video of all them. I just like the Blood Angels because it sounds cool. Fucking because they're red, you know. So, which one is better? This one? This is 16 minutes.
Dark Angels, the first Space Marine Legion, a title
They're
that comes
cool
with
too.
a long history of glory, secrecy, and betrayal. Before their Primarch, Lionel Johnson, was found, they were the Emperor's most disciplined warriors, used to test battle strategies that would shape the other legions. When Johnson took over, he made them even stronger, but his arrival created division within the already established hierarchy of the Legion. This led to a total collapse of the Dark Angels during the Horus Heresy, when a group of them, led by Luther, turned against the Imperium. What followed was a brutal civil war that tore apart their homeworld, Caliban, and scattered the fallen, those who had sided with the traitors. Ever since, the Legion has hunted them down in secret while burying the knowledge of these events. Clad in green armor, the Dark Angels are still one of the most powerful chapters in the Imperium. They operate from the Rock, a massive, drifting fortress that was once part of Caliban. They follow their own structure,
I'll throw pictures up in
independent
the
of the
Discord
Codex
there.
Astartes, with the upper ranks forming the inner circle, the few who are aware of most of the Legion's secrets. The rest of the chapter belongs to standard troops, or one of their two specialized combat wings. The Death Wing, hosting the veterans of the chapter, and the Raven Wing, their fast-striking division. Emperor's Children, the 3rd Space Marine Legion.
Space Marine ranks. I'll look at the legions first, and then we have a Warhammer section now, Femboy. Go up there. Oh, did you? Little Heidi. Little Heidi. Hey, Heidi. Can you come up? Come here. Huh? Oh. Oh my god, Zach. Hey, Zachy. Hello, hello. But the legions basically do not exist. Right.
Once the pride of the Imperium, now a twisted reflection of its former glory. Prior to their fall, they were a legion of elite warriors, handpicked for their skill and discipline. They were the only legion granted the Emperor's personal aquila, which they earned by protecting the Emperor during an assassination attempt. Their story nearly ended long before the Horus Heresy, when a devastating genetic flaw in their gene seed led to a catastrophic decline in their numbers. By the time their Primarch, Fulgrim, was found, the Legion was barely holding on. He refused to accept failure, and under his command, the Emperor's children clawed their way back to strength, proving themselves in battle with sheer determination. But this success would not lead to a good ending, as the Legion's desire to surpass all others corrupted them from within, and when the Horus Heresy erupted, they were one of the first legions to turn to chaos. Now the Emperor's children serve the chaos god of excess Slanesh. Clad in purple and gold, they fight with blinding speed, devastating sonic weapons, and razor-sharp blades.
The purple armor.
Iron Warriors, the 4th Legion, siege masters of the Imperium, known for their brutal efficiency and relentless warfare. Before their Primarch Perturabo was found, they were already the go-to legion for sieges, enduring long, grinding battles with little recognition. When he took command, he made them even more ruthless and disciplined, but the Emperor overused and underappreciated them, fueling deep resentment. During the Horus Heresy, the Iron Warriors turned against the Imperium, using their mastery of siege warfare to tear down its greatest defenses. Unlike other traitors, they didn't turn to chaos out of belief, just hatred and revenge. Now they rule from Medrengard, a fortress world of endless war machines. Clad in iron-gray armor with hazard stripes, they fight with brutal artillery, siege engines, and cold calculation. They still despise the Imperial fists, and when they lay siege to a world, victory is only a matter of time. White Scars. The 5th Legion, all about speed, precision, and striking before the enemy even knows they're there. Initially, they were the Star Hunters, a fast-moving force used for scouting and pursuit. When Jagatai Khan took over, he consolidated his legion's fighting style and encouraged more individuality in his Space Marines. During the
I like
Horus
the white
Heresy, they
and
hesitated
red,
to
actually
pick a
looks really
side,
nice.
but once they saw what Horus was really up to, they fought with the Imperium and spent the war tearing through traitor forces with hit-and-run tactics. Now they still operate from Chagoris, rocking white armor with red lightning patterns. They favor bikes, land speeders, and fast assault
Salamanders.
forces
Okay,
over
okay.
heavy firepower. Other legions might rely on brute force, while the White Scars will rather weaken and sabotage their enemies with repeated engagements. Space Wolves, the 6th Legion, a pack
I
of
see
brutal
the
warriors who
bikes.
fight with the savagery of ancient Terran hunters. The Space Wolves have always been known for their ferocity, used as the Emperor's executioners to wipe out entire civilizations. When their Primarch, Leman Russ, took command, he shaped them into something even deadlier, a legion of warriors who valued honor, brotherhood, and the thrill of battle above all else. They played a huge role in the Horus Heresy, with their most infamous act being the destruction of the Thousand Suns on Prospero, when the Emperor sent them to deal with Magnus. Now, they rule over Fenris, a death world of ice and monsters, operating
Fenris.
more like a pack than a traditional chapter. They reject the Codex Astartes, keeping their own structure with wolf lords leading great companies. Their gray armor, fanged helms, and runic weapons make them stand out, but it's their brutal combat style that really sets them apart. Close combat, ambush tactics, and overwhelming force. They're feared and respected across the Imperium, but also distrusted because of their past as executioners. Imperial Fists. The 7th Legion, the unbreakable defenders of the Imperium.
Guys.
Before their Primarch,
Yellow and
Vogel
red.
Dorn, was found, the Imperial Fists were already known for their discipline and ability to hold the line. Dorn took that to another level, turning them into masters of siege warfare and fortifications.
It was like
They were
gold?
the Emperor's Praetorians chosen to defend Terra itself. During the Horus Heresy, they played a key role in the siege of Terra, holding the walls of the Imperial Palace against the traitors. Dorn personally led the defense and was one of the first to see the Emperor's broken body after his battle with Horus. After the heresy, the Legion was broken into chapters, but their unyielding duty remained the same. Clad in bright yellow armor, the Imperial Fists are relentless in battle, specializing in defensive warfare, siege breaking, and brutal heavy weapons combat. They operate from the massive Phalanx, a space fortress that serves as their home base. Their rivalry with the Iron Warriors is one of the most bitter in the galaxy, as both legions see themselves as...
So, with these different legions, is there different sets for them, or do you make... So, like, do you get, like, one of these, but you put the... You just make them a different color, essentially?
As the true masters of siege warfare. Night Lords. The 8th Legion was built for fear. Unlike other legions that focused on discipline or honor, the Night Lords were designed to crush rebellions and keep planetary populations in line through terror tactics. They became the Imperium's enforcers, using their brutality to scare entire worlds into submission. Their Primarch, Conrad Kurz, greatly reinforced their identity as masters of psychological warfare. During the Horus Heresy, they turned against the Emperor, not out of loyalty to Horus, but because they had already lost faith in the Imperium. They didn't fight for chaos either, just for the chance to burn and kill without restrictions. After the war, the Legion shattered into warbands, raiding and pillaging with no real cause beyond destruction. They wear a midnight blue armor marked with lightning patterns and skull motifs and follow chaos undivided. They don't conquer or hold territory. They strike, leave fear in their wake, and move on to the next target. Blood Angels. The 9th Legion, built as brutal shock troops of the Imperium, feared for their excessive violence. They barely held themselves together before being reunited with their Primarch, Sanguinius. He developed an extremely strong bond with his legion, and under his leadership, the Blood Angels became noble warriors, fighting with grace and precision, known for their golden armor and angelic imagery. Then came the Horus Heresy. Sanguinius was one of the Emperor's most trusted sons and played a crucial role in the siege of Terra. He was the first to confront Horus aboard his flagship, a fight he never could have won. His tragic death broke the Legion, triggering a genetic curse, the Black Rage. Now some of their warriors suffer uncontrollable visions of their Primarch's final battle, believing themselves to be Sanguinius in his last moments. Despite this, the Blood Angels remain one of the most powerful and revered chapters in the Imperium. They favor fast aerial assaults using jump packs and elite melee units to slash through enemy lines. Their homeworld, Baal, stands as a fortress, though its survival is tested with each new war. Even as they struggle with their curse, they remain among the Emperor's most loyal sons, beautiful, deadly, and doomed. Iron Hands. The 10th Legion is a heavily mechanized force, specializing in tanks, dreadnoughts, and overwhelming firepower. They believe in relentless warfare, advancing through sheer durability and crushing force rather than speed or finesse. Their warriors favor cybernetic enhancements, viewing flesh as a weakness to be replaced with cold, unyielding metal. During the Great Crusade, they gained a reputation for brutal efficiency, wiping out enemies with coordinated armored assaults. But their downfall came during the Horus Heresy, when their ranks got severely reduced and their Primarch, Ferrus Manus, was slain. After the heresy, the Iron Hands became even more merciless, cutting off emotional connections and embracing mechanical perfection to an extreme. Operating from their homeworld of Medusa, they barely follow the Codex Astartes, preferring their own rigid, unyielding doctrines. They maintain a bitter rivalry with the Emperor's children, blaming them for Ferrus Manus' death. Their cold and detached nature makes them difficult allies, and they have no patience for anything they perceive as inefficient or weak. World Eaters. A legion built for brutal close combat, specializing in shock assaults and relentless melee warfare.
Jesus, loads of them.
Originally known as the Warhounds, they were aggressive but disciplined until their Primarch, Angron, was found. Unlike others, he had no interest in leading, having been raised as a gladiator slave. When he was forced to join the Imperium, he made sure his legion shared his suffering, implanting them with the butcher's nails, devices that drove them into uncontrollable bloodlust. Discipline crumbled, and by the time of the Horus Heresy, they were little more than berserkers, their tactics reduced to endless charges and slaughter. They turned on the Imperium not out of ideology, but because they saw Angron as their only master.
They're cool looking too.
Now, as a Chaos Legion devoted to Khorne, their once blue and white armor is bathed in red. World Eaters fight with pure aggression, overwhelming the enemy through relentless close combat. They favor rapid assaults using drop pods, jump packs, and transports to close the distance as fast as possible. Ultramarines. The most disciplined and strategically minded of all the legions, the Ultramarines are the model for what a Space Marine force should be. They were originally known as the Warborn, but their true strength emerged under their Primarch, Robut Guilliman, who built them into the largest and most organized legion of the Great Crusade. Unlike others, they didn't just conquer, they built, turning their empire of Ultramar into the most stable and prosperous region of the Imperium. While other legions fought for glory, they saw war as a duty, using precise tactics and flawless logistics to overwhelm their enemies. During the Horus Heresy, they were too far from Terra to stop Horus. But after the Emperor fell, Guilliman took control of the Imperium, restructuring the Space Marines into smaller chapters. Even now, they are the largest and most influential force, clad in their signature blue and gold, and following the Codex Astartes to the letter. Some call them noble defenders of humanity, others see them as self-righteous and rigid, but no one denies that, in terms of sheer military power, they are unmatched. Death Guard.
But they're the
A
strongest
relentless,
ones.
unyielding force, the Death Guard were built for grinding warfare. Originally known as the Dusk Raiders, they were experts in endurance-based combat, advancing through the deadliest battlefields without breaking formation. Their Primarch Mortarion only reinforced this mindset, training them to fight in toxic wastelands and resist the harshest conditions. But their resilience became their downfall. During the Horus Heresy, their fleet was trapped in the Warp, where the Destroyer Plague ravaged them. In agony, Mortarion made a desperate pact with Nurgle, the Chaos God of Decay. The Death Guard were reborn as plague-ridden, nearly unkillable monsters, spreading disease and rot wherever they go. Now they march under Nurgle's banner, their once pristine white and gray armor corroded into sickly greens and browns. They prefer slow, attrition-based warfare, shrugging off wounds that would kill other Astartes while spreading deadly plagues that break down their enemies before the fight even begins.
Before we go on to the next one, I'm going to have to actually leave it there because these dogs are going nuts. No, I'm gonna get off anyway, so... what I'm going to do is... for the next one, I'm gonna... should I do this one white? And then put the red on. What do you think? Or I might just do the rest of them, like, with the blue, and use this as like a blood kind of, like what I do with the weapons and stuff on their feet. Because like it literally, like, it doesn't show up on the camera properly, but like this actually looks like blood. Actually the same. Like when you look right in, it literally looks like blood. So weird. I think that's probably the best. I'm sure these are right. But yeah. Right, look, lads, thanks for coming by. I really appreciate it. We're gonna do another one tomorrow. Jesus. They are tough. It took me nearly 2 hours to do all of it. Using, you have 5 models using the testament. That's true, actually. I do have purple as well. And that's a base. The purple is a base. Yeah, we can try different. Yeah, that's actually a good idea. I have the Tyranids to do as well. But they can be done a different day. But look, thanks for coming by, lads. I really appreciate it. Bye bye. I'll see you tomorrow. I'll be back on tomorrow at some point, alright? Bye bye.